led by an interim Prime Minister. Border tensions have intensified. Personal and political relations with Cambodia have hit new lows. Thailand is no stranger to instability. Military coups and constitutional court rulings have led to political outcomes that are at odds with election results. Domestic issues are holding back Thailand's international progress and derailing its ability to govern for the future. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Daniel Rosny, researcher Evie Yabsley, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Craig Boardman.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. It's Wednesday, August 6th. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Let's say hello to our team. Abby Adiemi, our technical producer. Sierra Sanders is our show director this morning. And Brad Lillies is our YouTube live stream producer. And Heather Wells is here as well with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city's issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room falling where sensitive police data is stored. We're going to hear more about that. And more fallout today from a Wabkanu cabinet decision to dismiss appeals against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. One of the people behind one of those appeals says the environment minister didn't take his concerns seriously. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
19 degrees already here in Winnipeg in the downtown at the Forks. 60% chance of showers, risk of a thunderstorm today. So Abby Adiemi will be keeping us up to date on that weather forecast throughout the show. But coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump has given Russian President Vladimir Putin until this Friday to get cracking on a ceasefire deal with Ukraine or face new sanctions. We'll find out the latest on that. As well, how do we prevent more people from drowning? One Winnipeg swim instructor believes it could be as easy as creating legislation around our lakes. But what would those laws look like? That conversation is coming up in the 7 o'clock hour of the show. And if you've never paid attention to Meta's community guidelines, now may be the time to go back and take a closer look. Another Manitoban is speaking out after they had their Instagram account disabled by AI for allegedly violating rules that she knew nothing about. She's joining us just after 8 o'clock to tell us about what happened. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this week for Marcy Marcusa here on Information Radio, looking at some air quality warnings in effect for northern and central Manitoba. So this is continuing from a week of smoky conditions in these areas. Thompson, Norway House, Churchill. We'll keep you up to date on all of those quality warnings coming up.
Today on Q.
I'm Garvia Bailey, sitting in for Tom Power. Ebony Rowe is the founder of Honey Jam, Canada's first artist development program that helped launch the careers of artists like Nelly Furtado and Julie Black. She'll be here to reflect on creating a never-ending sisterhood.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Sam Sampson. As the world marks 80 years since the U.S. nuclear attack on Hiroshima, Japan, there are concerns global superpowers are becoming more militarized. Countries have even more powerful weapons now, and more world leaders are talking about using them. Crystal Gamansing reports.
At 8:15 local time, Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park fell silent. A tribute to all of those killed in the deadliest use of a single weapon in human history. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba telling the crowd, "We must not repeat the tragedy that was brought upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is our country's responsibility as the only nation that has suffered atomic bombings." He called today's environment increasingly severe, with wars raging across Africa, Asia, and Europe.
Looking at the arsenal stockpile of nuclear weapons that's around the world. There are more than 13,000 of them now.
Howard Kakita was 7 years old when Allied forces dropped the atomic bomb. He and his brother, American citizens, were visiting their grandparents.
Many of these 13,000 nuclear weapons that's available to the various countries in the world are anywhere from 10 to 200 times more powerful than the one that was dropped in Hiroshima.
Kakita champions non-proliferation, as do leaders in Japan. As songs of pacifism were performed, the experience of nuclear destruction clashed with the troubling reality of wars involving nuclear holders, such as Russia and Israel. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is in Moscow today, meeting with Russian leaders and possibly President Vladimir Putin. These are last-minute discussions before Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump's deadline to end the war in Ukraine. He says if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire, he will impose punishing sanctions. Here's Tammy Bruce with the U.S. State Department.
Clearly, the president's not happy with Mr. Putin and Russia, but he remains committed to diplomatic solutions.
Trump says he will see how these meetings go before he decides on next steps. A senior UN official is warning it could be catastrophic for millions of Palestinians if Israel expands its military operation in Gaza. But Israel's prime minister is signaling he is considering a full-scale occupation of the territory, even though hundreds of former security officials are calling for an end to the war. Susan Ormiston has this update from Jerusalem.
It's a tense wait now as furious debate swirls around next steps. Israel's security cabinet is scheduled to meet Thursday. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office signaled the armed forces are ready for any political decision, including a move towards fully occupying Gaza.
This would risk catastrophic consequences for millions of Palestinians and could further endanger the lives of the remaining hostages in Gaza.
At a UN Security Council meeting, the Assistant Secretary General, Miroslav Jenča, said any attempt to fully occupy Gaza would be deeply alarming. Eli David, the brother of one of the hostages, told the Security Council his family was traumatized by the latest Hamas video showing an emaciated Eviatar David.
In that video, my little brother was forced to speak to the world and then actively began to dig his own grave inside a filthy, dark tunnel in Gaza.
Families this morning warning full occupation of Gaza would be a disastrous decision.
Well, I don't know what the suggestion is. I know that we are there now trying to get people fed.
In Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump dodged the question of Netanyahu's plan.
The rest of it, I really can't say. That's going to be pretty much up to Israel. Yep.
Clearly, the U.S. is evaluating how Netanyahu's decision would impact the entire region, a volatile new turn in this 22-month-old war. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Trump puts the tariffs up, and Carney puts his elbows down.
Elbows down.
Elbows down.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre making his pitch to federal by-election voters in Drumheller, Alberta, and turning a critical eye to the Prime Minister. He says Mark Carney is not doing enough to stand up to U.S. tariffs.
Mark Carney has broken his promise to retaliate dollar for dollar. He's been making concession after concession, backing down to Donald Trump. As a result, Canadians are losing jobs and paying higher prices.
There are a lot of questions about Canada's next steps in this trade war. Carney has not mentioned countermeasures since August 1st, when Trump introduced a new round of tariffs. He has suggested he may remove existing tariffs if it will help Canadian industries. There will be more questions today when Carney holds separate meetings with his cabinet and the country's premiers. The Prime Minister is also taking steps to bring some relief to Canada's beleaguered forestry industry. After months of pressure from British Columbia, Mark Carney is introducing new loan and grant programs worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Brady Strachan has those details.
The BC interior remains home to a world-leading softwood lumber industry.
Speaking in front of dozens of mill workers in West Kelowna, Prime Minister Mark Carney laid out his plan to revitalize the softwood lumber industry. It comes at a time of high tension with Canada's largest trading partner. The sector has been a long-standing target of the U.S., which recently raised dumping duties on Canadian softwood.
Let's be clear. Canada does not dump lumber into the United States. And we will continue to make the case that these current and proposed duties are unjustified.
Carney is pledging $700 million in loan guarantees to the industry and $500 million in grants and other funding to help companies diversify beyond the U.S. He says Canada will become its own best customer, using homegrown lumber to double the pace of new home builds. BC Forests Minister Ravi Parmar says it's about time.
This is really good news. We have been calling on the federal government for the last number of months to ensure that it is standing strong with British Columbians and forestry workers.
However, union leader Gavin McGarrigle of Unifor says the measures don't go far enough.
We need support right now for people who have been laid off. We need to make sure, how are we going to keep these mills operating right now?
Meanwhile, Canada and the U.S. are still without a trade deal. Carney says he hasn't spoken with U.S. President Donald Trump in recent days and will pursue that conversation when it makes sense. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna, British Columbia.
More than 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants could go on strike later this month. Their union says after months of contract negotiations, there's still no agreement on wage issues, work rules, and unpaid hours. Its members have voted in favor of strike action. If an agreement still is not reached by August 16th, the union could issue a 72-hour strike notice. Air Canada says it believes there's still time to reach a deal. A rare find is causing excitement among archaeologists on Newfoundland's east coast. They uncovered some tiny artifacts in Fairyland, about 1 hour south of St. John's. As Henrika Wilhelm reports, it's turned out to be a big discovery.
It was a pretty neat thing to find.
Callum Bryden, a Memorial University graduate student, was the lucky finder of 7 so-called wampum beads at the colony of Avalon. The early English colonial site is where Bryden helps with excavations, and during a dig a few weeks ago, he came across the handmade shell beads, which are each about the size of a sunflower seed, cylindrical and colorful shades of purple. The beads are believed to be the first of their kind discovered in Newfoundland and Labrador, but at first, Bryden says the importance of his find wasn't quite clear to him.
I wasn't really thinking that I would be the one to find them. So it took me a second, but once we sort of realized what they were, it sort of seemed to be pretty significant.
Indigenous peoples made the beads from quahog clam and whelk shells, and according to Brian Galton, a Memorial University archaeology professor, they served a number of purposes.
Indigenous peoples used them for ornamentation, for ceremonial purposes, for diplomacy and things like that. And when Europeans first came to these shores, the Dutch and the English later, they adopted this indigenous use of wampum in their trade practices and also as a form of currency.
Galton says considering Fairyland's size and isolation, finding the beads is quite significant.
The people of Fairyland were interacting with, trading with, communicating with various peoples in various parts of North America and continental Europe. So these pieces really is a tangible reminder of those connections.
Galton says this summer has already brought a number of unexpected finds at the site, including small gaming pieces made of slate dating back to the 1620s. Henrika Wilhelm, CBC News, Fairyland.
That's your latest national and international news from World Report. If you are enjoying the World Report podcast, follow us, tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Sam Sampson. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Coming up on the show, have you ever wondered about the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke? Our regular medical contributor, Dr. Bardwaj, will join us with information about heat-related health problems. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump has given Russian President Vladimir Putin until this Friday to get cracking on a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. We'll find out the latest on that. But first, as the city looks to tackle violent crime in Osborne Village, one man who lives in the area has already been making his rounds, but not to patrol, rather to pick up trash. While talking trash as part of his podcast, we'll hear what he's been seeing in the village this summer. It's time now for news headlines with Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. A Winnipeg educator says she has spent weeks pushing social media company Meta to reinstate two of her Instagram accounts. Laura Thomas is a vice principal in the Winnipeg School Division. 3 weeks ago, she got an email from Meta saying a post on one of her accounts connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why this has happened. She calls it all emotional and frustrating. We'll hear from her. And the city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city's issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room where sensitive data from police is stored. We're going to hear that story and more in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Adiemi joins us for a quick look at your weather forecast.
Smoke
Good morning.
still in play. Good morning. Smoke in play across the central, the northern, and the southeastern part of the province this morning. Winnipeg at 18 degrees. We're warming up to 27, and it's going to feel humid, just like yesterday, close to in the 30s, and similar conditions in the southern part of the province.
Thank you very much, Abby. If you see anything on your commute this morning that is slowing you down, getting in your way, you can call us on our commuter line. Sierra Sanders, ready to take those calls. 204-788-3093. Violent assaults are up 44% this year in Osborne Village. That's according to preliminary data released by the Winnipeg Police Service in July. As a response, they've launched daily foot patrols in the village to tackle street crime in the neighborhood, with uniformed and plainclothed officers now deployed from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., 7 days a week. Mike Green also walks the streets of Osborne starting at 9 a.m. every Sunday, but for a different reason. He's a local comedian and the host of Trash Talk, a podcast he launched this summer, where he picks up trash in the village and talks about the neighborhood's issues with guests. Mike has been picking up trash in the area for 3 seasons now, filling up 7 to 8 buckets each week. He spoke with CBC's Laurie Hoogstraten yesterday on Up to Speed.
It's not everyone that would volunteer to pick up litter in the village every weekend. Why do you love Osborne Village enough to do that? What makes it so special to you?
Well, I've lived in the village since 2019, and where I live is actually right across from the Oak Table Wanja City programs that operate out of the church. So I'm sort of at the epicenter of where a lot of trash blossoms from. Not to denigrate the programs, but we can talk about the different crimes that happen in the village. And one thing that came up at a police town hall recently was some people blame those programs for attracting certain people to the village, and they blame the crime on that. And I'm not entirely convinced of all that, but it is undeniable that a lot of trash does come from the people who use those programs. So basically, I'm a man who has the time, and I am so close to it. If I wasn't picking it up, I would be buried in trash. So that was really the impetus for starting.
So to get it done at all, you need to do it?
Absolutely. And I always tell people when I do this that there's nothing altruistic about it. I start with my building and I work my way out. I do end up cleaning the village, but I prioritize my section, which I don't think there's anything wrong with. And I think if more people had that approach, we would have a pretty clean Osborne Village.
Sure. Yeah. So how much has the village changed since you moved there? What are you seeing now? You touched on all the garbage, but what about other things that you're seeing?
So it definitely hit an absolute low ebb, 2021. Mid-COVID, just with all the businesses that were closing on the strip. The village was very vibrant for many years. There was the much-touted Greatest Neighborhood in Canada award, which I think might have been a bit of a trumped-up award, to be honest with you. We were a great neighborhood. I don't know if we were ever the best in Canada, but it was a good neighborhood with a lot of businesses. I was there all the time through early 2010, because that's when I started doing comedy, and all the venues that ran open mics were in there. So it was definitely a different neighborhood then. And it was already maybe in a bit of a spiral 2018, 2019 when I moved in, but I still really love the neighborhood. And then, in the 2021 era when just so many things were closed and the church area, not necessarily those programs, but there was an encampment that built up there and everything. It was a pretty desperate time. And even I would say that lasted until 2023. We needed more businesses to open, which now has happened and stuff. But there was a period leading up to that where, I did sort of wonder, what am I doing in this neighborhood?
And what do you wonder now?
Now, honestly, I'm optimistic. Shout out to people who took risks on businesses like Shirley's and Baby. And it's nice to have that little bit of the strip where you can walk and just see restaurant, business, whatever, and the 2 new apartment buildings that have opened. But yeah, there is definitely something unique to the village, which is that, you don't really see as many neighborhoods that have just so many mixed demographics. Like, it's young, old, it's wealthy, it's kids getting their first apartment on Roslyn. And so it's just a lot of different people. And I think we all see the problems and don't exactly know who to blame. So it's getting better, but there's definitely a tension. I can tell you from a trash perspective, I'm picking up less needles now than last summer. No needles, but I do also have a sharps container given to me specifically by Michaela Smartbrows, a local tattoo artist in the village. There is a sense of the people there and the business there trying to figure out what we can do to help each other. Her giving me a sharps container because she watched Trash Talk and saw an episode where I came upon needles, and I've been picking up needles for summers now. I honestly didn't know how to handle them. Still not quite sure I know, but at least now I have the proper container. Yeah.
Well, violent assaults, though, are up 44% this year alone in Osborne Village. Are you fearful yourself, or what measures do you take to feel safe?
So I'm not exactly fearful for myself, and I'll acknowledge there's a tremendous amount of privilege that I enjoy as a man. I'm less concerned with how to handle it. The video of Trash Talk that sort of blew up was me confronting a guy who I caught him on camera in the middle of the night trying to break into my building, which had been an issue. And so I fixed the door. So I had a video of him trying to get in, and he couldn't. And that was at 2:30 a.m. And then at 9 a.m., I saw him stealing a bike, and I walked up to him and said, "Hey, man, you tried to break into my building last night, and you're stealing this bike right now." So, I wasn't necessarily afraid to do that. I do have a partner who I live with. And last summer, when I mentioned, starting to feel at its worst, I did have a talk with her about, what are you doing as you enter the village? Are you noticing things, or do you have your headphones in? I was more worried before. I think that violent crime is, I'm surprised to hear the police say the stats were up 44% on that, because I was just at the town hall, and I guess they were saying overall they were telling us that meaning that crime was down. Maybe I missed the part where they referenced that they acknowledge violent crime being up. I would say the violent crime I've witnessed, and I have witnessed a decent amount of it, not necessarily on the walks, but again, just because I live in the village, I'm always coming home late at night after shows. A lot of it, the violence I see is between the disenfranchised amongst each other. Obviously these things happen, and we know that woman was attacked getting off a bus last month, but more of the violence that I've seen have been brawls between people who are already, homeless.
Well, you mentioned the town hall meeting about crime. So what sorts of things were you hearing from the residents and businesses?
So I think it was a pretty interesting town hall, because it started off where a lot of the residents who were older, because it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so that's who could attend. They were mentioning things like, could we not help by creating a force of us retired seniors who look on Facebook Marketplace and notice the things that are stolen, and we report that? There was a real sense of people who want to do something and don't know how to help. And then there was one gentleman who chimed up and said, "Look, I've been here for a long time, and I've had businesses, and I've always lived around here, and it was not like this before the church program started running." And there was a palpable shift in the room where you got a sense that people wanted to bring that up, but they were a little bit afraid to be called out. And this gentleman said, I brought this up when I was on the biz, and I was called heartless, and now look where we're at. And then people from the program started chiming up, and they said, well, we know it's tough, but we are attacking the problems by helping the disenfranchised, and if you treat their desperation, it tends to treat the crimes. And then he said, well, then why is it worse? And there started to be it was honestly, it was a fun moment, because it was sort of the angry town halls you see in movies, people kind of chalking over each other. Might not be the most fruitful, but you got a sense this is what we all want to be talking about. And then unfortunately it had to get shut down. And I do think it's interesting that, this gentleman was saying it's the church's fault, the programs that run out of the church. And you could sense people somewhat agreed with him. And then he used a phrase which was pretty disparaging, which is he said, at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., it's the zombie walk. You can see the zombies coming out of there, and that's who's doing all the crime.
And did anyone speak in defense of
absolutely. Well, the people from the program started addressing it, and they were pretty respectful. And then he said, you're just trying to buy your way into heaven, which is not a helpful thing to say. I think there's a lot of people who run those programs who do them because they're genuinely compassionate. But then it started to get a little bit heated, and the police said, the gentleman who was leading the meeting said, we're going to shut this down before people start, disparaging members of the community. And someone yelled out, well, this guy's calling members of our community zombies, and that's not great. And I honestly found that sentiment to be as unhelpful as you're trying to buy your way into heaven, because to say that these are members of our community, like, Lori, I live across from the church. I've been in the village a lot. I know the members of my community. I know Yelling Lady. I know Bow and Arrow Guy. You know, I know Suitcase Man. Like, there are characters and there are people who use the programs, and I see them every single day queuing up for lunch. And I don't think that's who this gentleman was talking about when he talks about the crime, you know?
Well, I wanted to ask you, the police, they've increased patrols and safety checks because of the high rates of violence. But do you think an increased police presence is the answer?
I don't think it's the answer, because I think even the police would acknowledge to some degree they can only be there to prevent things. I think the answer, and it's certainly like if I had the answer to homelessness and drug addiction and poverty, you know, I would be the greatest person alive. But I think the answer, and what the conversation as I see it, and it's come up in my comments a lot on Trash Talk, it only seems to get as far as, look, we all acknowledge that the program is good, but also why does it have to be here? That's really what this gentleman was saying. He you know, I don't want to paint him in too negative a light. He was saying, I like the work these people do, but this blend of social work and residential has never been done before, and it's a failure for these reasons. And you know, again, nobody lives closer to the church. If I told you the things I've had to deal with in the last 5 years, I don't know if you'd believe it, but I think that it'd be easy to say, can we just move it? But what if the very real situation is that, well, if it was not here, it would not exist. Those supports just would be erased from budgets and gone. And then me, even as someone who's like at the epicenter of it, I would say, okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to go, but can we improve its influence then? Does it have to end at 4 o'clock? And does your oversight have to end at your front door? Because I'll tell you what's right outside their front door is my front door. And that's what I'm dealing with every single day.
Mike Green is a Winnipeg comedian and the host of Trash Talk on YouTube.
It's an honor to have you at the White House.
The stories that matter.
The opportunity is in the partnership.
As they happen.
There are some places that are never for sale.
And what they mean to you.
But never say never. Never say never.
For news you can trust, stay with CBC News.
Moving to international news, in Russia's war in Ukraine, it's been a summer of Russia pummeling Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, with missiles, and Ukraine's fighting back as best it can. The number of people killed on both sides is rising daily. U.S. President Donald Trump, who once said he could end the war in a day, has given Russia's President Vladimir Putin a new deadline. The message: get cracking on a ceasefire by Friday or face new, tougher sanctions. Trump is sending his special envoy Steve Witkoff, a fellow real estate mogul, to negotiate in Moscow this week. Joining me now to catch up is Maria Popova. She's a professor in the Department of Political Science at McGill University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us the latest on Steve Witkoff's mission to Moscow and what he's trying to accomplish here.
What he's going to try to do is to achieve something that he could not achieve in several previous trips, which is to get Russia to compromise on its war in Ukraine. Now, we remember Ukraine agreed to a unconditional ceasefire back in March, but Russia has been absolutely intransigent since and has not agreed to anything. It insists on its maximalist goals, which are conquering all of Ukraine, something that they cannot accomplish militarily, but they're still committed to.
So in Moscow, what's the strategy there towards Trump's shuttle diplomacy?
The strategy is wait and see and don't compromise until you absolutely have to. And so far, Russia can keep up the war effort, so it doesn't have to compromise on those grounds. And in terms of pressure by the U.S., it hasn't been pressured, really. Trump has talked some talk, but has not walked the walk. He has not introduced any new sanctions. He has set deadlines and then extended them, and set new deadlines and then extended them again. He has not delivered new military aid to Ukraine. To be fair, he also hasn't abandoned Ukraine fully, but he has not upped the pressure on Russia. And that's why Russia is not really going for a compromise yet.
Trump has conceded that Russia is good at getting around sanctions. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, indeed, Russia has allies in the global south that are buying its sanctioned goods. India, China, Iran, etc. They're helping the Russian economy, and the Russian economy is afloat. But let's not mistake this for the sanctions not working at all. Clearly, the sanctions are making a dent. That's why Russia is asking daily for these sanctions to be lifted, because it knows that its oil revenues are down despite the alternative buyers. Their inflation is up. Their incomes are propped up only because of military pay and death payments that they have to make to people. So this is not a sustainable economic strategy in the long term. Russia is basically sacrificing its economic prosperity at the altar of this territorial expansion that they're pursuing.
What do we know then about internal dissent or even apathy towards the war in Russia? What sources can you rely on to gauge that?
There's not a lot of internal dissent. Russians have a long history of being proud of territorial expansion and of great power status. All sorts of polls, both conducted by internal Russian organizations, by external organizations, polls that are asking questions directly, polls that are using sophisticated polling techniques where you ask a sensitive question really indirectly to gauge the answer, to sort of work out the answer. There are special techniques. All of them show solid support in Russian society for the war. So we cannot expect Russian society to stop this war. They are generally supportive of the goal of conquering Ukraine. At the same time, even though there are enough volunteers who are willing to kill Ukrainians for pay, there isn't really a lot of appetite for a general mobilization. Most people are supportive of the war goals in principle, but don't want to die for them. So there is a lot of apathy.
So during this summer, Russia has been pummeling Ukraine and its capital with missiles. I mentioned this earlier. What's been the effect of that campaign on the war effort?
There hasn't been an effect for Russia. Russia is hoping that that targeting civilians will basically break Ukrainians' will to resist, and Ukrainians will demand from their government to surrender. And that has not happened. We do not see any appetite for surrender in Ukraine, and therefore this strategy is failing. Of course, a lot of sleepless nights in Kyiv, a lot of innocent lives lost. This is a horrible transgression of international law by Russia, but it is not achieving the results that Russia is hoping for.
We just have about 30 seconds left here, Maria, but I want to ask about the movement towards a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. How much progress has been made, if any at all?
There has been no progress. Ukraine agreed to the ceasefire back in March, and Russia is so far refusing a ceasefire, and there are no very credible signs coming that it will agree to a ceasefire unless it is pressured.
Maria, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Always a pleasure.
That was Maria Popova. She's a professor in the Department of Political Science at McGill University. Still to come on Information Radio, we will get all your business news with Crystalie Ramlakan. As well, with hot weather comes the risk of heat-related health problems. We will hear from Dr. Raj Bhardwaj about that and how people can acclimatize to the heat. Those stories and more coming up after your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's 6:30, partly cloudy, 18 degrees right now. We're going to see a good chance of showers in Winnipeg today. 60% possibility, maybe even a thunderstorm. And that wind from the southwest gusting to 40. Today's high is 27. A lot like yesterday as far as temperature goes. A Winnipeg educator says she has spent weeks pushing social media company Meta to reinstate 2 of her Instagram accounts. Laura Thomas is a vice principal in the Winnipeg School Division. 3 weeks ago, she got an email from Meta saying a post on one of the accounts connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why this happened. Since then, she has spent hours on the phone with Meta support staff.
It's very frustrating. It's emotional. And you want to do the right thing by these, social media accounts. And it's all just for connection, right? Connecting with others. And when that's taken away, it's very hard.
All of this comes after Meta issued an apology to an Ontario teacher for wrongly accusing her of child exploitation and deactivating her account. Thomas says her personal account is a portfolio of time spent with family and friends. She's also president of the Fort Garry North Hockey Association and started the association's Instagram page to share team updates and registration information. As of yesterday, both of Thomas's accounts were still disabled. More fallout today from a Wab Canoe cabinet decision to dismiss appeals against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. As CBC's Bartlett Kivas reports, one of the people behind one of the appeals says the environment minister didn't take his concerns seriously.
The Canoe cabinet issued an order in July quashing appeals against an environmental license for the Tanko mine at Burnick Lake. Aaron Weeb was an appellant. He raised concerns about the lack of water quality testing at the lake, which drains through the Bird River to Lac du Bonnet.
I'm sure that the concentrations are very diluted once they get to Lac du Bonnet, but how could there not be measures in place to test Burnick Lake itself?
The license requires testing of effluent that enters the lake. Environment Minister Mike Moyes says that's enough.
We addressed those issues in the license. We're always going to protect the water, the land, the air in Manitoba.
Weeb says that's not true. He says he received a form letter from Moyes that didn't address downstream testing. PC leader Abi Khan says the government should have allowed the appeals.
The NDP are making decisions behind closed doors. They're boxing Manitobans out.
Weeb said he learned his appeal was dismissed from a CBC News story. 7 hours later, he received his dismissal letter. Bartlett Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city has issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room where sensitive police data is stored. The building opened 9 years ago. The police HQ has been the subject of 2 scathing audits, an RCMP investigation, and civil lawsuits over bribery, fraud, and construction deficiencies. The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin met with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow today. The U.S. is trying to reach a deal to end the war in Ukraine. No word what the two discussed, but the U.S. threatens more sanctions if there is no peace. Tammy Bruce is with the U.S. State Department.
Clearly, the president's not happy with Mr. Putin and Russia, but he remains committed to diplomatic solutions. I would say that we've also seen a remark, perhaps a reflection of possible secondary sanctions regarding the sale of oil, countries that are buying Russian oil.
U.S. President Donald Trump is giving Russia a deadline of this Friday to make progress towards peace. 80 years ago today.
When Andy...
Bells tolling at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan. It was 8:15 in the morning, August 6, 1945, when the United States dropped an atomic bomb on that Japanese city. It was the deadliest single use of a weapon in human history. 3 days later, another Japanese city, Nagasaki, was bombed. All this amid concerns global superpowers are becoming more militarized today. Countries have even more powerful weapons now, and more world leaders are talking about using them. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Several pistachio-related products are being recalled after salmonella infection sent 9 people to hospital and sickened dozens more. One product on the list, the viral Dubai brand pistachio and Kanafe milk chocolate bar. Health Canada says if you have that chocolate, do not eat it. A list of recalled products is available on the CBC website. And you can find more Manitoba news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Very important there, Heather. Those chocolate bars are very trendy right now.
Really, really popular. Have you tried them?
I haven't. I don't like pistachio, so
Oh.
not really up my alley, but I see them everywhere online. So definitely got to get the word out about that one.
Yeah. My daughter bought me one. And they're really thick. These are big chocolate bars.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the draw. Hey, you break it open and there's lots of stuff inside, or
so much stuff.
Okay. Did you like it? Was it good?
You know what? I wasn't a fan. No.
Okay.
But I love pistachios. But yeah, I just didn't like that.
All right. Well, we will keep that reminder coming. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Adiemi, technical producer, joins us now for a look at the weather forecast.
Good morning once again, Chloe. We have smoke, we have clouds, and we have showers in the forecast today. And that would be what the conditions would look like across most of the region. If we're looking from the Saskatchewan border into the Dauphin area, we'll be seeing that rain already coming towards that part of the province. We do have air quality warnings in effect for parts of, central Manitoba all the way to Churchill this morning. The air quality is really rated as really, really poor in those regions. We're looking at it from the Flin Flon all the way into Thompson, Churchill, and even the York region this morning. And we also have statements for regions around Pinefall, Victoria Beach, and Bissett this morning. Also, visibility may be reduced at times, and the air may feel thick and hard to breathe for folks in that region. So you need to take care. Conditions in Winnipeg right now, we're looking at the Red River Valley seeing 18 degrees, partly cloudy conditions outside. Showers expected today. We might see feel some thunderstorms here and there. We warm up to around 27 today, but the humidity is going to be in the range of 33, 34 in this part of the province. For the Pembina Valley region, we're talking about Morden, Winkler, Alton, and Morris, all the way down to the U.S. border. We're looking at similar conditions to Winnipeg, 17 at this time, though it's calm to light southeast winds as we're seeing at this time. Today brings cloudy skies, a good chance of showers also in the forecast for folks in that region. We'll see some thunderstorms roll by later. Highs will be around 27, and it's going to feel humid for folks in that part of the province. We're talking about mid-30s. Also, in the Westman region, Brandon, Nipawak, all the way down to Killarney and surrounding regions, 18 degrees at this time. Cloudy skies also. We saw some light rain earlier, but now it's cloudy in that part of the province. Showers on and off today. Temperatures will get to 26. It's going to feel like around 31, 32 with the humidity factored in. Now, tracking conditions in the Parkland region. Dauphin, Russell, Roblin, we're seeing 17 degrees this morning. Cloud cover and light westerly breeze. Scattered showers we noticed also earlier, and that will be on and off. Smoke also hanging in the air for that part of the province. Temperatures will be warming up to around 24 degrees, and the humidity will be close to 30 degrees. Now, in the Interlake region, good morning to our friends in Gimli. We're seeing 19 degrees in that part of the province this morning. Partly cloudy conditions also, light southeast breeze. Today, we should be seeing some cloudy conditions, a risk of thunderstorms in the forecast. Smoke will build into the evening period, and we'll see temperatures warm up to 25. The humidity is going to make it feel close to 30 degrees, and that will be the conditions even into the overnight period. Now, tracking it all the way crossing into the northern part of the province, the powerful influence nearby areas, 18, 19 degrees in most of these regions. We saw some misty conditions earlier. That's still hanging back. Light southeast winds, rain possible, and thunderstorms might move through this morning. The smoke will still be staying. The rain will not help much. We'll see temperatures get close to 21 degrees. And we're looking at about, for Flin Flon, we see 18 degrees. There's similar conditions to what we're seeing in the PAR. And we might be seeing rain up to 15 millimeters for that part of the province. So that may help with if we still have ongoing fire in that part of the province. So a good one there. And overnight, we're going to see some clear conditions overnight. Thompson, all the way down to Nelson House and Split Lake, we're seeing 17, 18 degrees already this morning. Thick smoke in that part of the province. Showers and thunderstorms also expected some time this morning for that part of the province. However, the smoke will remain heavy through the day. Temperatures get to 26. And then for Churchill, we're seeing 16 degrees with smoky skies and southerly breeze. A chance of showers also in that part of the province. with continued smoke reducing visibility, highs around 25, the humidity near 30 degrees. So across board, it's more like smoke continues to be the major factor for today, and then we'll see showers. More like everywhere we'll be seeing showers today. We're just seeing showers left and right.
Rain everywhere.
Yep.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That is Abby Adiemi. I'm joined now by Sierra Sanders, show director. Sierra, you are keeping an eye on that commute.
And it is a quiet commute so far this morning. So things are moving along quite well on your morning commute so far. For the YouTube streamer, the YouTube watchers, they'll be able to see I'm wearing a jacket because it's freezing. Abby's weather, I promise, does not, it doesn't represent.
But also, I have the same jacket. It is a CBC jacket. It's good for rain, so you're actually prepped.
Exactly. If I need to
here.
walk out and it's raining, I'll be good to go.
Perfect.
And if there's like a sudden rain shower in here, I guess.
I
maybe.
sure hope not.
Me too. I hope not either. And hopefully there's nothing's raining on your commute today. But if there's something going on, if it's slow out there and something slowing you down, whether you are here in the city or out on the highways, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra.
Thank you.
That is Sierra Sanders. And Brad Lillies is working that YouTube live stream this morning. And hello to the viewers on YouTube. It's time now to head to Crystalie Ramlakan at the CBC Business Desk. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chloe.
So what is the latest when it comes to the trade situation between Canada and the U.S.?
Well, Prime Minister Mark Carney is showing no signs of retaliating against increased U.S. tariffs right now. And he's actually even hinted at dropping tariffs if it would help Canadian industries. So as we know, the two countries did not reach a trade deal by that August 1st deadline set by President Donald Trump. And that's resulted in a 35% import tax on some Canadian goods. Of course, we know this rate applies to goods not covered by the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, though. Now, the Trump administration says the higher rate is in response partly to counter tariffs. So, of course, there's been so many moves on this story and this file, but some people may remember in March, Canada imposed 25% tariffs on about $30 billion worth of U.S. products. Now, Carney's next steps are being closely watched as he juggles expectations from Canadians and an unpredictable president at the same time. Now, Carney says he hasn't spoken to Trump in recent days and will do so when it makes sense. Carney will talk U.S. trade as he holds meetings with premiers and his cabinet today. And the federal government has announced $1.2 billion in supports for the Canadian softwood industry, which is experiencing another round of devastating duties. So Carney calls the duties unjustified and has promised to try to move the industry away from its dependence on the U.S. market.
Such a rapidly changing story, Crystalie, so really grateful for you keeping us updated here. Next, Air Canada flight attendants have approved a strike mandate. What does that mean?
So flight attendants have voted in favor of a strike if necessary. So the move could allow them to walk off the job as early as this month, and the union could give a 72-hour strike notice as early as August 16th. And that's because, negotiations between the union and the airline hit an impasse last month. So flight attendants are asking for higher wages and compensation for all their time worked. So their contracts pay for the time that they're in the air, but they don't cover when they arrive before boarding and before they get on that plane. And of course, we know planes can be delayed and whatnot. Now, Air Canada says the issue of ground time is being discussed with the union as part of a conversation about overall compensation. And Canada's largest carrier believes there is enough time to reach an agreement and to avoid disrupting the plans of hundreds of thousands of travelers. Of course, we know summer is a very busy travel time here in Canada.
And NFL fans. Football fans are going to want to listen closely to this one. There's been a large deal in the sports and entertainment business. What details do you have?
Yeah, that's right. So Disney's ESPN has reached a landmark deal with the NFL to acquire the NFL network and other media assets from the league in exchange for the NFL taking a 10% equity stake in the sports network. So ESPN says the deal will increase the offerings on its upcoming streaming service. And the streaming service could launch as early as this month and will cost about $30 US per month. So if you have it, you're going to have access to ESPN's portfolio of both professional and college sports, including the NBA, the WNBA, MLB, and the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship, as well as SportsCenter. Now, the league launched the NFL Network back in 2003 to try to get in on some revenue. And while it did gain traction, it never really rose to become a rival to ESPN. And of course, this deal is still subject to regulatory approval. The financial terms were not disclosed, but there are reports, including from The Athletic, that the deal could be worth potentially billions of dollars.
All right. What's happening in markets so far this morning, Crystalie?
In Europe, European pharma stocks are sliding after Trump threatened 250% tariffs. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed after Trump says semiconductor tariffs will be announced soon. So Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is up. Oil is up $1.12 to $66.28 US per barrel. Gold is down $16 to $3,363.40 US per ounce, and the dollar is up 0.03 of a cent to 72.6 cents US.
Thank you so much, Crystalie.
Okay, thanks, Chloe.
That was Crystalie Ramlakan with the business news. The time is 6:47. You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or on your CBC Listen app. And if you're like me, you want to tune into this one. If you're like me and you just can't seem to exist outside when it's really, really hot, stay tuned here. The dog days of summer, we're feeling them. They're here. And in many places at different times, it's been really hot. I know the humidity has been a huge factor here in Manitoba. With all of August ahead of us, there are more warnings about extreme heat and the health-related problems that come with it. In the next installation of his summer series of health topics, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj joins us to talk about heat-related health problems. Good morning.
Good morning, Chloe.
So why does hot weather cause health problems?
Yeah, your body is built to be able to operate within some pretty specific parameters, and temperature is one of those big parameters. Our baseline body temperature is somewhere around 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. And once we hit even 38 degrees, we call that a fever. And as if you get as high as 41 or 42 degrees for a core body temperature, then we're starting to really suffer. And a core body temperature in the range of like 44 to 47, so that's just 10 degrees above our normal body temperature, that can be deadly. So prolonged exposure to heat, and especially heat and humidity, can make it really hard for your body to cool itself down and to keep it within that really tight range of temperature parameters where it functions properly. So if it's not too hot out, then we're fine. We lose heat to the cooler air around us, but that stops working if it gets too hot or too humid. Then your heart starts to work harder to pump blood to your skin where the heat can radiate out of your body. Your body makes more sweat, which means more water loss, more salt loss. And if you don't replace the water and the salts fast enough or in the right proportions, then that can lead to dehydration and other problems. And if you don't sweat enough because now you're dehydrated, or if sweating becomes way less efficient because of the humidity and heat, then you're really prone to overheating. So basically, we are very fine-tuned machines, and we got to keep in the normal parameters, or else it can be really taxing on the body.
Dr. Bhardwaj, how would someone know if they're starting to run into problems with overheating other than just feeling too hot?
Right. So we mostly cool our bodies by sweating. So the first thing you might run into is noticing that, hey, I'm not sweating as much because I'm starting to get dehydrated, right? So a little bit of a dry mouth, dry skin, less sweating might be your first sign. Other than, like you said, just feeling really hot. You might also notice as you get dehydrated that you're not peeing as much and that your urine is darker. And since we can't cool ourselves, if you're getting dehydrated, you're not sweating, then you can't cool yourself as well. Then you can start getting into heat exhaustion. So heat exhaustion, you'll notice like a faster heart rate, maybe some muscle cramps, maybe feeling a little lightheaded, swelling of your hands and feet. And then as it gets worse, you might get nausea. You might get a headache. You might feel quite weak, but your brain is still working mostly okay. As that heat exhaustion gets worse, then we get into the realm of heat stroke, which is, the worsening headache, the dizziness, the confusion, eventually can lead to seizures and things like that. That's, of course, a medical emergency.
Dr. Bardawash, I ask this on behalf of myself and so many other people out there who just can't seem to spend extended periods of time outside when it's hot. Why are some people more prone to heat-related problems?
Yeah, different people are different. So we can run into problems at drastically different temperatures. And that depends on your health. It depends on your medications. It depends on your living conditions. It depends on your genetics, all sorts of things. But one thing that's a big factor is your age. So as we get older, our bodies don't regulate temperature as well. Blood vessels don't dilate as well or as much to help radiate that heat away from our core. We don't sweat as much. And sometimes we don't even feel as thirsty as we get dehydrated either. And on the other end of the age continuum, babies also can have some issues with heat, right? Babies and infants, they don't sweat as well, and they can't control their environment. They can't just sort of take off their own clothes by themselves if they're getting too hot. And then there are all sorts of other factors as well. Being pregnant, being overweight, having mental health issues, even substance use can all impair your ability to deal with the heat. And then also medications can throw a wrench into things. There are, for example, some blood pressure medicines that make it so your heart rate can't ramp up as effectively if you're under stress. Or some other blood pressure medicines, they work as diuretics. They make you pee, so that alters the functions of your kidneys, and it makes you more prone to dehydration. There are medications like antidepressants or ADHD meds, or even antihistamines that can impair your body's ability to detect or deal with heat stress, and some can impair sweating as well. And then there are the environmental sort of social risk factors, right? So we often see people, often older people or isolated people who have been brought in by EMS with, bad heat-related issues. And we think, gosh, it's only 29, 30 degrees out. But then EMS tells us, yeah, but in their apartment, it was like 45, 48 degrees Celsius, right? So living alone, not having stable housing, having to work in the heat, having a place where you can't take shelter from the heat, especially if your apartment is the place that's really, really hot. Those are all risk factors for heat-related health problems too.
Yeah, so many different factors there. What about acclimatizing to the heat? Could people, quote unquote, practice and get better at spending time outside when it's warm?
You absolutely can. Yeah. So adapting to the heat does a bunch of things. And, most of it happens naturally. So you don't even need to actively practice unless you're like an athlete or something like that. But as it gets hot, your body starts to adapt. And one thing it does is it increases your sweating efficiency. So basically starting to sweat earlier, sweating more, even losing fewer electrolytes in your sweat. Now that can happen to a point. You can't make a whole lot more sweat glands or anything like that. So it's sort of one of those things that has a limit, and it takes time, right? So it takes at least a couple of weeks to sort of really start to acclimatize. And after 4 or 5 weeks of consistently being exposed to heat or humidity or both, then your body can even do things like change the number of red blood cells and even increase your blood volume a little bit so that you've got sort of more to lose before you become dehydrated, things like that. So usually we kind of reserve that for high level athletes, people training for, the World Cup or something like that, where they have to run around in the heat and humidity. They will train in hot, humid environments beforehand. Or, workers who have to go work in really hot, humid environments, things like that. But there are limits to how much a person's body can acclimatize, and it's not for everyone. So if you're thinking of doing it, you need to go slow, take breaks, and be on the lookout for those signs of heat-related problems, dehydration, heat exhaustion, things like that.
Our forecast here in Winnipeg the next few days looking at potential temperatures over 30 with the humidex. So what can people do to be prepared when the really hot weather arrives?
Yeah, and just knowing the forecast and knowing that what we're in for is definitely something to keep an eye on. That humidex or that's a very helpful tool, because it's not just the heat, it's the heat plus humidity that makes your sweating less efficient, right? And that's when we first start running into problems. So keep an eye on that. Also, keep an eye on your body temperature. So having a thermometer that works is helpful for a whole lot of medical reasons, but this is one of them. Some people are listening and they think, oh, I take blood pressure medicines, or I'm on ADHD meds or something. Don't stop taking your pills, but do talk to your pharmacist or doctor about if any medications that you're on might be making it for your body, might be making it harder for your body to deal with the heat. And if so, then be more proactive about dealing with the heat sooner rather than later. And control your environment as much as you can. We all do that dance in the summertime of like opening windows and closing curtains and, putting fans out and things like that. But if it gets warmer, especially at night, or if it gets warm and smoky, which unfortunately we see, or as the humidity increases, then really air conditioning is going to be your best bet. But not everybody has air conditioning, of course, right? So then think about like, where can I go to get some respite? So public libraries, shopping malls, community centers, green spaces outdoors, shady parks, pools, things like that. And then don't wait till you're dry to stay hydrated. Keep staying hydrated through the day. So water, popsicles for the kids, watermelon, oranges, humid or, watery treats basically are really helpful. If you need to cool down, cool baths, cool showers, cold, wet face cloths, things like that are helpful. And then please check in on your friends or your neighbors who might be at risk. So older folks, people who don't have AC, people who might have some baseline health issues. And if you think that someone is starting to suffer from heat-related illness, then, get them to a cool place, get them checked out. If they're looking unwell, then calling 911 is always an option, because we don't want to get too far down that road of heat exhaustion and then into heat stroke.
Dr. Bardwaj, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
That's House Dr. Raj Bardwaj. It's time now to head to Heather Wells with your news headlines.
Good morning. The city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city's issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room. That's where sensitive police data is stored. More fallout today from a Wapcanoe cabinet decision to dismiss appeals against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. One of the people behind one of those appeals says the environment minister did not take his concerns seriously. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. I'm Chloe Friesen. You're listening to Information Radio. Coming up in the next hour of the show.
Drowning is preventable. It's 100% preventable. Nobody needs to drown.
Over the weekend, 2 Manitoba men died in separate drownings. In both cases, they were not wearing a life jacket. We'll speak with a swim instructor on what she thinks is needed to prevent more drownings and save lives. That conversation and so much more coming up on Information Radio. World Report is next.
Today on The Current.
I'm Sean Henry. Staring up at the starry sky is an iconic part of Canadian summers. The tragically hip even sing about it.
It was in Cajun. I saw the constellations.
Some parts of the country are protecting dark skies from light pollution and drawing tourists with their nighttime views. Coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Sam Samson. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he wants to know what is happening with Canada's tariff response.
Trump puts the tariffs up, and Carney puts his elbows down. Elbows down. Elbows down. Yep.
And there will be more questions today when Prime Minister Mark Carney meets with his cabinet and the country's premiers. U.S. President Donald Trump announced new tariffs on August 1st. And since then, the Prime Minister has not mentioned any countermeasures. Let's bring in Megan Fitzpatrick from our Parliamentary Bureau. Megan, what do we know about where things stand so far?
Well, when Prime Minister Carney announced supports yesterday for the softwood lumber industry, he was asked whether he's spoken to Trump lately, and he said he hadn't, and that he will when it makes sense. He also explained his position on counter tariffs on the U.S., saying Canada won't automatically match escalated tariffs by the U.S. with counter tariffs of our own. He said the approach has always been to impose countermeasures that have maximum impact on the U.S. and minimal impact on Canada. So perhaps that's an indication of what lies ahead, lifting of tariffs on the U.S. rather than imposing more. And if that is the case, that will be disappointing to Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who has called on Ottawa to match the U.S.'s 50% tariff on steel. But other premiers like Scott Moe aren't keen on that kind of retaliation. So likely this will be a topic of discussion today between Carney and the premiers. They had urged Carney not to rush into a deal for August 1st, saying they'd rather hold out to get a good deal. So they're likely anxious to hear what's standing in the way.
Two members of Carney's cabinet, the finance and foreign affairs ministers, are in Mexico right now. How are those talks going?
Well, they say they're going great and that they had informative and productive meetings yesterday, including with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. And they were asked if they got any insight from Sheinbaum in terms of her talks with Trump and how she managed to get a 90-day extension for trade talks and avoid the higher tariffs that were imposed on Friday. They were making the point that Canada and Mexico have different relationships with the U.S. They're on kind of different paths in terms of their negotiations. Today, they'll meet with business leaders, and the ministers say this visit is meant to kickstart the bilateral relationship with Mexico.
Megan Fitzpatrick in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
U.S. President Donald Trump is musing about the federal government taking over Washington, D.C. A former DOJ staffer was injured in an attempted carjacking on Sunday, and Trump says crime in the U.S. Capitol is totally out of control.
A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C., and either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Trump has talked about federalizing D.C. since the beginning of his second term. In April, Republicans in Congress voted to leave the city with $1 billion budget shortfall. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is canceling $500 million in funding for developing our mRNA vaccines. The U.S. Health Secretary says he questions the technology's safety and effectiveness. Critics say Kennedy's actions could erode preventative health care in the U.S. Steve Futterman has more.
This is the latest move by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has been a longtime skeptic of vaccines. In a video statement, Kennedy said, in some cases, mRNA vaccines have hurt more than helped.
HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risk than benefits for these respiratory viruses.
And he said the department is now looking for a replacement.
We're prioritizing the development of safer, broader vaccine strategies.
mRNA vaccines are developed differently than more traditional vaccines like polio. And while there are some doctors who are skeptics, the overwhelming majority of infectious disease specialists say it is safe, effective, easier to develop, and was the key reason a COVID vaccine was available so quickly. Some believe this latest move undermines the ability to rapidly counter future biological threats. Dr. William Schaffner is a professor of preventative medicine at Vanderbilt University. He says mRNA works.
It's been used to create
the COVID vaccines that have been used so successfully in the millions upon millions of doses around the world.
Previously, Kennedy fired the group of experts that makes vaccine recommendations. And even as measles cases have risen this year, Kennedy has refused to strongly recommend measles vaccines. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Russian leaders are meeting with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He's in Moscow to push for an end to the war in Ukraine by Friday. U.S. President Donald Trump has promised sanctions if Russia does not show progress. Dominic Velitis is following the story.
Russian state TV broadcasting the news that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived at the Kremlin. His sit-down with the Russian leadership today will be a high-stakes meeting.
We'll see what happens.
U.S. President Donald Trump has given Russia's Vladimir Putin until Friday to make progress towards peace in Ukraine or face sweeping new sanctions. In a move that could affect global markets, Trump's also threatened to impose tariffs on countries like China and India, which buy Russian oil. But analysts say Putin is unlikely to bow to Trump's impending sanctions ultimatum. It's believed the Russian leader is convinced Moscow is winning in Ukraine and doubts additional US sanctions will have much of an impact. Dominic Velitis for CBC News, London.
In BC's Fraser Valley, there's a problem with illegal dumping. CBC News has learned 2 Abbotsford companies with a history of environmental violations are owned by the same person, and residents say the punishments doled out by the province are not stopping people from ditching their waste. John Hernandez reports.
It's not a win if it's just a shuffle.
For years, Darcy Henderson fought to have illegally dumped municipal waste removed from her community. The piles were unloaded by organics company Fraser Valley Renewables in 2022 to a property in Lindell Beach, a village that's 100 kilometers east of Vancouver. It was finally trucked away in 2024 by provincial order, but the waste didn't go far. Inspectors recently found the company illegally dumped 8 truckloads of it at a property an hour down the road.
The problem has not been solved. It's simply been moved.
The discovery comes amid a series of other violations connected to that company and another business owned by the same person. Matthew Malkin also owns Fraser Valley Agri-Waste. Both operate out of the same composting facility, which inspectors recently found to be bringing in municipal waste at triple its allowed capacity. Agri-Waste is also being investigated for liquid pollution near an Abbotsford stream. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans is looking into it. The companies have been fined $17,000 for infractions.
It comes across as the cost of doing business.
Fraser Valley Regional District Director Taryn Dixon says there needs to be stiffer fines and better oversight.
The ministry does need to have sort of a long-term plan to remedy the situation.
CBC News has reached out to Malkin, who hasn't responded. Inspectors have recommended further fines. John Hernandez, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Rising tennis star Victoria Mboko faces her latest challenge tonight, playing in the semifinals of the Canadian Open in Montreal. She seemingly came out of nowhere with a surprise win against the tournament's top-seeded player. As Sarah Levitt reports, she's not done yet.
Heading to the court to practice, surrounded by 4 security guards, Victoria Mboko is the talk of the Women's Canadian Open in Montreal. Fans are trying to get selfies and autographs from the 18-year-old tennis player from Toronto. As her profile grows at home and abroad, tonight she heads into her first semifinal match in the big leagues. Mboko isn't flustered though. She said this after her quarterfinal win.
It's not like I went to celebrate or anything. Like, I was still kind of locked in like I normally am in a tournament. You know, you play a tournament because you want to win it.
Mboko's Cinderella run really started with a win against the tournament's #1 seed, American Coco Gauff. Then she powered through the quarterfinals as fans cheered and waved Canadian flags. She now faces a tough opponent in Kazakhstan's Elena Rybakina, who she lost to 2 weeks ago in Washington. Mboko's coach, Nathalie Tosia, says the player has taken all the attention in stride and isn't worried for tonight.
I don't know if she's better this week than Washington, but she have maybe more confidence, so it can help. But the thing she have more than Rybakina this week is the public.
Vicky Mboko sets up.
By all indications, that public will be out in full force and firmly on her side tonight. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
That's your latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Sam Sampson. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. .3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Coming up on the show, world leaders are back at the table in Geneva, trying once again to reach a global deal on plastic pollution. Can they agree on real limits, or will industry push back? We'll have more on that story. Also, the season for wasps is nearly upon us. We'll find out what some of the benefits are of having them around and what to do if you want them to buzz off. But first, after 2 drowning deaths in Manitoba over the long weekend, many are wondering, how do we prevent more people from drowning? One Winnipeg swim instructor believes it could be as easy as creating legislation around our lakes. But what would those laws look like? That conversation coming up next. But first, news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg educator says she has spent weeks pushing social media company Meta to reinstate 2 of her Instagram accounts. Laura Thomas is a vice principal in the Winnipeg School Division, and 3 weeks ago, she got an email from Meta saying a post on one of the accounts connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why it happened, and she says it is emotional and frustrating. We're going to hear from her coming up. The city of Winnipeg plans to spend another third of $1 million on its troubled police headquarters. The city has issued a tender to replace the roof of the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room, which is where sensitive police data is stored. Those stories and more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Hello and good morning to the team on the show. Brad Lillies is behind our YouTube live stream this morning. Abby Adiemi, our show technician, also keeping us updated on your weather forecast. Good morning.
Good morning. We're looking at smoky skies, warm temperatures, and scattered showers. That's what will dominate the forecast for today. We still have air quality warnings in effect across central and northern Manitoba. We're talking about thick smoke from nearby wildfires, which is really reducing visibilities and increasing health risk in all these regions. Also, special air quality statements in effect for parts of the eastern part of the province from Bissett all the way to Pine Falls, so you need to take care. Winnipeg right now, 19 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Cloud cover will build through the day, a good chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm. It's going to be warm and humid today. The high will get to 27, but it's going to feel much warmer than that. And tonight, the showers will taper off, then we'll see some clear conditions, and it's going to be mild all the way into tomorrow. Across the southern part of the province, we're already seeing 18 to 20 degrees right now. Most of the regions warming up to 29 degrees, while up north, we're already seeing temperatures getting into the 20s, also warming to 26. But smoke is a huge concern in the northern part of the province. Winnipeg right now, 19, and showers likely this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
And good morning to Sierra Sanders, our show director. Sierra's also keeping an eye on your commute. It's been rather quiet.
It has been a quiet morning on the commute, so things are moving smoothly out there. But if that is not the case, and there's something slowing you down out there, whether you are walking, biking, driving, maybe you're e-scootering, I don't know. I've been seeing them.
There's a lot of scooters.
There's a lot of scooters out there. Exactly, they are popular. They're gaining popularity these days. So, however you are getting around this morning, and whether you are here in Winnipeg or you're out on the highways, I'd love to know what's going on out there on your drive. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
As you heard in the news on Saturday of the August-long weekend, 2 Manitobans died in separate drownings. One of the deaths occurred in Reynolds Ponds, just east of Winnipeg. RCMP say a 70-year-old man was swimming and didn't resurface. The other death happened later that same day after a 25-year-old man fell off a pool flotation device in Lake Winnipeg and drowned. Police say both men were not wearing life jackets. According to the Life Saving Society, water-related deaths have been on the rise in Manitoba since 2019. And although it's a concerning trend, Winnipegger Rashana Hyman says it's one that can be changed. She's a swim instructor and the founder of Swim With Me, a nonprofit that teaches kids how to swim for free. And Rashana joins us now in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So as a swimming instructor, what's your reaction when you hear stories like this one?
Every time I hear a story like this, I feel like a piece of me breaks a little bit more. This is actually why the Swim With Me Foundation started in the first place, was with the idea to completely prevent drownings. They're 100% preventable, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. My heart goes out to the families and friends affected by these 2 drownings this past weekend.
And Swim With Me, it's dedicated to teaching kids to swim for free. So
it's actually we've actually
expanded?
Yes, it has expanded.
Okay.
We are now also teaching adults as well. There's a large need in Manitoba for adults who don't know how to swim, so that we can prevent drownings just like these 2.
Is that something that you saw more of a need for as you kind of continued in your foundation?
Yes, I think as the landscape of Manitoba has changed and we've welcomed more newcomers and more people have openly admitted that they never got the opportunity to take swimming lessons as a child, we have worked with those changes and adapted and now opened it up to being able to offer adults swimming lessons.
Now, these 2 drownings took place in large open bodies of water. They weren't in pools. What are some things that you find that people might take for granted when it comes to swimming in a pond or a lake?
I think the big thing is it doesn't have any walls or a bottom. You can't always touch and you can't see. So people think that, I can go in the water and I can walk, or I've been in a swimming pool and therefore I know how to swim. And that's not the case. We spend a lot of time, whether it be through the foundation or through my other swim academy hat that I wear, that explaining to families and to kids and to whoever comes through our doors that just because you've taken a swimming lesson doesn't mean you actually know how to swim. We work with them very carefully. We do a lot of water safety in both programs. We put them through the Life Saving Society's Swim to Survive standards with the foundation. And we actually say, is there anyone in your family that can swim? If they say no, we say they can't take you swimming. You need to be with someone that knows how to swim, and you need to be wearing a life jacket. We're really clear on what that looks like. And I think that I think the general public isn't aware of that, and people don't know their limits. And it's really important when you go into open bodies of water that you remember 3 very important things. You need to go with a buddy. And that includes letting somebody know where you're going. It also includes knowing your limits and wearing a life jacket. It's pretty simple. And yet here we are again discussing 2 tragedies that could have been preventable.
I think a lot of Manitobans who go to beaches, who go to ponds, who are swimming in these open bodies of water, I know I don't see a lot of life jackets in these spaces. Why do you think that people are still reluctant to buy or own or use life jackets in these scenarios?
Life jackets are bulky. They're cumbersome. They're not so fashionable. We like to say that they are, the best accessory you will ever wear in the water. And we see it all the time. I mean, you look at your social media feeds of people out enjoying summer. Most of them are not wearing life jackets. And it hurts me every single time that we see this. It's something so simple to put it on, and you can't help the person that you're with if you get injured. You can't help yourself. In all the drownings that took place in Manitoba between 2018 and 2022, not one of them was wearing a life jacket.
What do you say to folks who might think, I know how to swim. I've been swimming my whole life. Why should I have a life jacket?
Again, I think we just need to make the point that, if something were to happen to you, if you were to get injured, if you were to gasp for air, if you breathe in some water, if you get turned around in a lake or something happens, and it can happen quickly. And I do hear from people who have cottages and they boat and lake all summer and they do all these things, and suddenly something happens and they say, we should have been wearing that life jacket, or, now we know. It's not enough to just have it at your feet. If the boat tips over, or you get thrown from a boat, or the wind picks up and your flotation device goes ahead of you and you're not wearing anything, there's no ground, there's no wall to hold on to. You need that life jacket to keep you buoyant and to keep you safe.
And you've been thinking about legislation around open bodies of water and swimming. What does that look like in your mind?
Listen, I think it needs to be a partnership. I think it needs to bring lots of people to the table, but I think it can include things like having life jacket stands at beaches where people can easily wear them. I think it means laws. I think it means actually policing, going out and monitoring the people and saying you need to be in a life jacket, or, put your life jacket on any watercraft. Like that includes flotation devices, that includes stand-up paddle boards, canoes, all these smaller watercrafts that people think that they don't need to wear life jackets on, but tragedies occur in all of those instances regularly. I think it also includes getting the government involved and having schools working and getting their swimmers to the pool. I know that through the foundation, we have altered things that we've done a little bit and piloted some projects where we're working with schools that meet the needs of the foundation. So the foundation offers free swimming lessons to kids that can't afford it and those new to the country. There are a number of schools that fit that criteria, and we've been working with those schools to bring the students during the day, and it has been incredible on both ends. Like the staff are raving about it, the principals are thrilled, the kids are over the moon, and you can just see their confidence. Everyone wants to enjoy summer. It's so short here, but they need to do it safely.
Is there enough swimming instructors or lifeguards or folks to make sure that these types of programs can happen here in Manitoba?
I believe there are. Yes, we all hear about shortages and pool closures and all those things, but there is being a lifeguard and a swim instructor is a great job. It is. I can't say enough about it. Obviously, I'm in the industry, but it is a great part-time job. It's even a great full-time career, and I think that there are a lot of young people that want to get into it. It offers, set hours. It's great for while they're in school. It teaches lots of great life skills and transferable skills for other professions down the road. And I think that Manitoba has lots and lots and lots of people in this industry that are ready to get their feet wet and help out.
Summer isn't over. There's lots of time here for Manitobans to spend in and around bodies of water. What do you want people to keep in mind? What's the one thing that folks should be thinking about as they are spending the summer in and around the water?
My message to adults is that I think you need to remember that you're role models. You're leaders and you're role models in your families and in your communities. And if you are wearing a life jacket, you are more likely to have your family members, your younger kids, cousins, friends wearing them as well. I know at Aqua Essence Swim Academy, we tell all of our swim staff that if we learn over the summer that you were out in the water without a life jacket, you no longer have a job here. It is that simple. You are a role model. You are a teacher. You need to practice what you preach.
How do they respond to that?
Listen, they teach it, right? Like you're held to a different standard. You spend all year teaching kids and families about water safety. If you're not putting that into action yourselves when you're out enjoying the water, you're not sharing that message, and it's not a good look. And I think that parents, it's like bike helmets or seatbelts in cars. I think that life jackets need to be a mandatory thing. And I think if more adults are wearing them and they put them on. I mean, how many boating pictures do we see where the kids are all wearing life jackets and the adults are sitting next to them without them? If something happens, they are helpless to their kids.
Roshana, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Roshana Hyman is a swim instructor and the founder of Swim With Me.
CBC Gem is your ultimate sports destination. It's free, it's live and on demand, and it's everything you need for a summer full of edge-of-your-seat sports action. Experience exciting leagues featuring elite athletes in the Wanda Diamond League, the new Northern Super League with top women's international and Canadian players, and a whole lot more. Watch free on CBC Gem.
You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Currently 19 degrees here in Winnipeg at the Forks. Cloudy skies. We have a 60% chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm today. So could see some precipitation out there. It's time now to head to sports news with Paul McGowan. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Chloe.
Let's start with the Blue Jays, whose bats stayed hot last night against the Rockies.
Did they ever? A night after scoring 15, the Blue Jays hit 5 home runs on their way to a 10-4 victory. 2 of those 5 home runs came off the bat of Dalton Varsho, who we have not seen much of this year because of injury, and as a result, his stat line looks ridiculous right now. Has 24 hits on the season, 18 of those have gone for extra bases, and 11 of those 24 hits have been home runs. But Varsho said last night that he's not necessarily trying to hit for power.
I think it's just more of having better thoughts, having feels of being able to kind of work on stuff and knowing what it needs to look like and what it's supposed to feel like. And having the great hitting coaches we have, it just helps me out a ton. I'm not trying to do anything different. I'm not trying to hit homers. I'm trying to hit a ground ball right back to the pitcher, to be honest. So the power will come. I've kind of said it from the get-go of like, if I can just control that, good things are going to happen.
It puts the Jays in position to sweep Colorado this afternoon, and there are a bunch of early games in Major League Baseball today. The Jays and Rockies play just after 2.
And we're moving to tennis here. Canadians' eyes on Mboko, semifinal night in Montreal.
Yeah, believe it or not, though, Victoria Mboko not in prime time in Montreal.
What?
She and Elena Rybakina, I know, they play the early semifinal tonight. Now, Rybakina at one time was ranked 3rd in the world. She has a fantastic serve, and Mboko, very familiar with Rybakina because the two played exactly 2 weeks ago at the City Open in Washington. Rybakina won that match in straight sets, and afterward had this to say about Mboko.
She has really great strokes and very good serve, and I think it's all just about a little bit more experience, and I think we will see her many more in the big tournaments, and yeah, it's a great player, and we'll see how she does in the future.
Yeah, we'll see if Mboko has enough more experience to get by Rybakina. But, you know, it's worth noting that Mboko lost to Coco Gauff at the Italian Open in May, and then this past Saturday managed to get past Gauff in straight sets. So looking for a similar narrative tonight, and if she does get past Rybakina, she'd be in tomorrow's final in Montreal.
I like that storyline, Paul.
Yeah, me too, right? Just making those small adjustments, knowing your opponent a little better.
Finally, you have news about a banned substance in the NFL.
A newly banned substance in the NFL. The league sent a memo this week informing teams that they can no longer use smelling salts at any point during a game. And if you've ever watched hockey, you know that the smelling salts are what players are wafting under their nose on the bench and then reacting violently to. And the idea is to increase alertness, but medical experts are concerned about smelling salts masking symptoms of a concussion. Here's sports medicine Dr. Brian Suterer of Missouri.
If you think of somebody who's maybe having symptoms of a concussion, they're a little bit dazed because they got knocked funny, and instead of just appropriately being evaluated, they reach for the smelling salts. The smelling salts are going to make it much harder to properly assess for a brain injury, and so then if you go back out there with a brain injury, you're of course at a lot worse of risks. And when they're just on the bench like this, there's no real control over who might have a concussion or concussion symptoms, but is reaching for smelling salts instead.
Now, this is already proving unpopular with players, but again, aimed at better identifying concussions, which makes it an oddly progressive decision by the NFL. Some quick local notes in baseball. The Goldeyes lost a heartbreaker to the Sioux Falls Canaries, they are not out of playoff contention, but they are 12 games back. They play against the Canaries again tonight, 6:35 first pitch. And a Bombers note before I go, Zach Collaros, left tackle Stanley Bryant, both full participants in yesterday's practice and trending towards playing on Saturday.
All right, that's some great news for the Bombers.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Chloe.
That is CBC's Paul McGowan with your sports news. Coming up on Information Radio, these party crashers are coming to a backyard barbecue near you. Still to come, we'll get the buzz on wasp season. They're coming, folks. We can't avoid it. That story is coming up just after your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30, 19 degrees, mostly cloudy right now. We have a very good chance of seeing more showers, maybe even a thunderstorm in Winnipeg this afternoon. A high of 27, a humidex at 33. A Winnipeg educator says she has lost access to more than a decade of her most cherished memories after social media company Meta disabled 2 of her Instagram accounts. Winnipeg School Division Vice Principal Laura Thomas says her personal account is a portfolio of her life. 3 weeks ago, she got an email from Meta saying a post on one account connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why this happened. She has been fighting to get answers and regain access ever since.
My heart just sank. I immediately just thought about my personal account and, those memories with my grandparents and all of our family holidays. And, there's videos of my daughter, who's now 12, talking when she was 2 years old. And, there's so many memories there.
Thomas is also president of the Fort Garry North Hockey Association. She uses its Instagram page to share team updates and registration information. As of yesterday, both of Thomas's accounts were still disabled. Now, all of this comes after Meta issued an apology to an Ontario teacher for wrongly accusing her of child exploitation and deactivating her account. More fallout today from a Wab Canoe cabinet decision to dismiss appeals against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, one of the people behind one of those appeals says the Environment Minister did not take his concerns seriously.
The Canoe Cabinet issued an order in July quashing appeals against an environmental license for the Tanko mine at Burnick Lake. Aaron Wiebe was an appellant. He raised concerns about the lack of water quality testing at the lake, which drains through the Bird River to Lac du Bonnet.
I'm sure that the concentrations are very diluted once they get to Lac du Bonnet, but how could there not be measures in place to test Burnick Lake itself?
The license requires testing of effluent that enters the lake. Environment Minister Mike Moyes says that's enough.
We addressed those issues in the license. We're always going to protect the water, the land, the air in Manitoba.
Wiebe says that's not true. He says he received a form letter from Moyes that didn't address downstream testing. PC leader Abi Khan says the government should have allowed the appeals.
The NDP are making decisions behind closed doors. They're boxing Manitobans out.
Wiebe said he learned his appeal was dismissed from a CBC News story. 7 hours later, he received his dismissal letter. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city has issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room. That's where sensitive police data is stored. The building, opened 9 years ago, the police headquarters has been the subject of 2 scathing audits, an RCMP investigation, and civil lawsuits over bribery, fraud, and construction deficiencies. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is criticizing Prime Minister Mark Carney for suggesting Canada might drop some tariffs on the U.S. as a way to ease tension with the Trump administration.
He said he would do dollar-for-dollar tariffs during the election, even while he was simultaneously taking the tariffs off. He promised elbows up, but now he's doing elbows down. He's making one concession after another to Donald Trump.
Poilievre made the comment in Drumheller, Alberta, while campaigning for a seat in a federal by-election. A high-level meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has just wrapped up in Moscow. There is no word on what the two discussed, but the U.S. threatens Russia with more sanctions if there's no move towards trying to end the war in Ukraine. Tammy Bruce is with the U.S. State Department.
Clearly, the president's not happy with Mr. Putin and Russia, but he remains committed to diplomatic solutions. I would say that we've also seen a remark, perhaps a reflection of possible secondary sanctions regarding the sale of oil, countries that are buying Russian oil.
U.S. President Trump is giving Russia a deadline of Friday to make progress towards peace. 80 years ago today. Bells tolling at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park in Japan. It was 8:15 in the morning, August 6th, 1945, when the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city. 140,000 people died. It was the deadliest single use of a weapon in human history. 3 days later, another Japanese city, Nagasaki, was bombed, killing 70,000 more. All of this amid concerns now global superpowers are becoming more militarized. Countries have even more powerful weapons now, and more world leaders are talking about using them. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and you can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, I want to ask you about a classic Manitoba experience.
Okay.
It's maybe a picnic, backyard barbecue. You open a soda, and an insect comes by. What's your experience with wasps?
Oh my goodness. You know what? We've had them. We actually had them in our backyard. And you know, in the summer, everyone wants to spend as much time in your backyard as possible, right? Well, we had a compost bin. And somehow they got inside because these compost bins have, they vent, they have holes for ventilation, and I guess that's how they got in and made a wasp nest inside, and it was covered with wasps. It was not a pleasant experience.
No, but we're gonna speak with an expert here who says that wasps actually have benefits for the environment and the ecosystem. Yeah, I think all we know is just how annoying they are. So I'm excited to gain hopefully a new perspective here.
Yeah, me too. We can ease up on our dislike.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Addy, thoughts on wasps?
I once almost choked on wasp at Morris Stampede. The little mini donuts in the park, and it's just in its drum there. And I was like, and then there was a wasp just down there in the ring of the donuts. Almost went into my mouth.
Here's the thing. I kind of understand the wasp's perspective on that one. If I was a wasp, I would also probably want to be in a container of mini donuts.
But that never happened. I caught it in time.
Oh, good. You are looking at the weather forecast.
Yes, smoky, warm, humid, and the clouds are building. Scattered showers across most of the regions today, from south all the way tracking it into the northern part of the province. We're already seeing that rain cloud getting above the Gimli Dauphin region this morning. We have air quality statements, air quality warnings and statements in effect for a bunch of regions, talking about the central part, the northern part of the province, and the southeastern part of the province. We're going to be seeing smoke impacting people in that region. Winnipeg right now, 19 degrees, partly cloudy. The sun really struggling to make its appearance, but the skies will stay mostly cloudy through the day. We do have a good chance of showers and the risk of thunderstorms for today. It will feel humid. Temperatures will get close to 27. And looking at temperatures across the southern part of the province, similar conditions to Winnipeg, 17 in the Pembina Valley region. The Westman region is around 18 at this time. The Parkland region is at 17. Gimli is at 19. The Par is at 18. Flintstone 18. Everywhere we're seeing 18 degrees across board, and we'll see temperatures get close to 27, and the humidity is going to be feeling in the range of the 30s this morning. But the major concern across most of the region is the smoke in the northern part of the province and into that central and the southeastern part of the province this morning. But whatever you do, hydrate and look out for the wasps.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And if you're listening here, you might, if you're listening closely, you might have heard the commuter line ringing. So Sierra Sanders currently on the line, finding out what's happening out there on the roads. So once Sierra has that information, we will share that with you. If you want to be the next caller on the commuter line, the number is 204-788-3093. You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, and let's take everyone back to that classic Manitoba moment I was talking about with Heather Wells. Maybe it's a backyard barbecue, or picture a picnic in the park. You crack open a cold soda and become the most popular person in the vicinity, for wasps at least. Maybe you run, maybe you swat at them, protecting the opening of that can. Might be a hornet or a yellow jacket. Wasps, they are a nuisance at this time of year. However, there are actually many benefits to having those striped party crashers buzzing around your backyard. Noria Morfin is an assistant professor in the Department of Entomology at the University of Manitoba and joins us over Zoom. Good morning.
Hello, Chloe. Good morning. How are you?
I am doing well. We've been talking wasps all morning here. Why is it that we generally start to notice wasps more around this time, kind of mid to end of the summer, rather than earlier in the season?
Absolutely. And that's a very interesting question. So wasps and social wasps, such as a yellow jacket, they have a very interesting life cycle. A queen will start the colony from scratch in the spring. So the population of wasps will slowly start to increase or ramp up. And right now, during late summer, early fall, we see the most population of these yellow friends. So that is why we notice them in the fall. They have been growing their colonies, getting stronger. And right now, they are out and about foraging and looking for food to feed their sisters and their brood.
Why is that food so often, it might just be my perception, but why does it seem like it's often sweet things? Like I talked about soda cans. Abby had a mini donuts story. Do they love sugar?
They love sugar, but they are called generalists. That means they like everything. So they would be eating sugars, carbs, your donuts. They do like soda. And that's a great idea, just to keep it close, avoid swallowing a wasp. That could be very painful. But they also look after protein. So that is why we can see them in our burger, our hot dog, and other foods. They are not picky. They would go after different kinds of sources.
And I know that folks have a lot of stories. I know that I have one of being bitten by a wasp. Why is it true that wasps are more likely to sting or bite compared to bees?
Well, wasps, they can be defensive when they are protecting their nests. So they are a little picky with that. If you get closer to their nest, that they could be an aerial nest up high or under the ground, they would get defensive, try to protect each other. So they would be more likely to sting you. But they are, as I like to say, they are defensive. They are not aggressive. When you see them in your backyard, when you're having a picnic, eating your lunch, they are after the food. They are not going to have aggressive behaviors. So sometimes when we move our hands, we try to swat them, we accidentally bump into them, and we can get a sting. It hurts, I won't lie. And they can sting more than once compared to a honeybee. Honeybees, they can only sting you once per bee. So that's mainly the reason. If you notice a nest, try to stay away. If you're around in a picnic, if you ignore them, I try to do this with my hands, just scare them away.
Right, just kind of flashing your fingers around.
Exactly. Swatting is not the best idea.
Yeah, do they bite or do they sting? I know that people have talked about a wasp bite. What do they do when they make contact with your skin?
Well, yeah, they can try it out, and they do have mandibles. They are very strong, and they can bite you, but it won't hurt. What it hurts is a sting. So they have a stinger and a venom. And yeah, when they do that, either by accident or defending their nest, it can be painful for sure.
So we've been talking about them kind of disrupting picnics and maybe stinging, but they do have benefits. That's something that you're here to talk about. What are the benefits of having wasps around?
Thank you so much, and that's a great point. And just like a interesting note, there are more than 100,000 species of bees in the world. Some of them are social, like the yellow jackets that we see in the video, and other ones are solitary. They can have different life histories, different roles in our environment, but one of the main things that we have to thank the wasps is pollination. They are pollinating our gardens, and others, like yellow jackets, in addition to that, they also are carnivores, so they keep pests under control. So, for example, if there's a high population of flies or other pests, they would be feeding on them, keeping those populations low. So they are very important to our environment to maintain balance in our systems.
We know that wildfire smoke can have an impact on bees. We've heard from some experts on that, but what about wasps? Is it the same? Are we seeing less wasps due to the amount of wildfire smoke?
So that question is very interesting, and I don't think I have an answer. What I can say is that I'm a honeybee person. I work with honeybees. They are excellent bioindicators. That means that they can tell us how the stressors, how the environmental issues are stressing them. And if they are being affected, most likely other pollinators and beneficial insects, including wasps and others, could be affected.
If somebody finds a wasp nest in their backyard, or they want to keep them maybe out of their garden, but also now maybe don't want to kill them, what are the options in terms of deterring wasps from an area?
That's a very good point. Right now, once the nests are established, it's very hard to keep them away. The best approach is to put or place traps around our picnic areas or our backyards early in the spring. So if you prevent the queens from nesting, your wasp issues during the fall will be less. Right now, it would be a little bit tricky. My recommendation would be just to be patient. If the nests are not in your pathways, if they are not around pets or kids, if you can avoid them, they will dwindle down, their population will start to decline, and those colonies, they will die over the winter. If you notice an empty nest during the winter when it's empty, you can remove them, and it would be less likely that another colony will reestablish during the next season.
And they're fascinating to just look at in the wintertime if you find them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting. So imagine all the population will die, and then only the queens will look for a spot to overwinter.
Oh, wow.
And they, by themselves, they will start the colony from scratch again during the next season, for the next season. So it's absolutely amazing what they can do.
So I know that I've seen in stores you can set up like a fake wasp nest. What does that do? Does that deter them from the area?
Yes, the idea is that they would be territorial, and they would be deterred from establishing. To be honest, there's not many studies that are actually confirming that theory. It could help us feel that we're doing something. If the problem is absolutely bad and you have a lot of wasps, and like I mentioned before, they could be a little bit of a danger for kids or pets, there are some traps that are based on pheromones, and only wasps would go in and be attracted to those pheromones. They come in a little pack. That could be an option. Like I mentioned before, if you are able just to be patient, they will die, they will dwindle in the next weeks.
Nuria, lastly here, we know that wasps have a bad reputation. So what would you want Manitobans to understand about them as we kind of head into the last of summer here?
Yeah, so I would say that they are our allies. They have different roles, and they are very important to our environment. Through pollination or by keeping other pests under control, There are very interesting things that we do with them. For example, there's a wasp that can be a parasitoid. That means that wasp is able to lay eggs on brood, and we use them as a biocontrol method for pests in crop systems. So when you see wasps, don't see them only as a nuisance, they can also be our allies.
Well, thank you, Nuria, for challenging our perspective on these creatures. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Nuria Morfin is an assistant professor in the Department of Entomology at the University of Manitoba.
As wildfires impact our province, keep up to date with CBC. For the latest information, listen to CBC Radio 1. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba or the CBC News app. For people who have a limited data plan or are running into spotty mobile service on the road, visit cbc.ca/lite. That's cbc.ca/LITE.
You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen. A global treaty to tackle plastic pollution is on the table in Geneva this week. Environmental advocates believe that taking strong action now could make a big difference. That's why they're calling for firm restrictions on plastic production. For a closer look, we've reached Ashley Wallace. She is an associate director of environmental defense. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the big picture. Why are these treaty talks in Geneva such a big deal right now?
Well, this is hopefully, or meant to be, the final round of negotiations towards a global plastics treaty, which is supposed to deal with one of the largest pollution crises of our time. So the amount of plastic being produced worldwide has been growing exponentially for nearly a generation. If we don't put the brakes on, it's estimated that plastic use is slated to double by 2050, and plastic waste generation will triple by 2060. I think many listeners have probably heard about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is this huge area of the Pacific Ocean that is full of this plastic slurry. Maybe they've seen photographs of turtles with straws in their noses, or heard about whales with bellies full of plastic bags. But, I think increasingly we're concerned about the impact that these plastics are having on human health. So scientists are connecting plastics and the chemicals that they're made from to human health issues like cancers, infertility, obesity, and heart disease. And our hope is that getting international coordination on the issue of plastics and reducing plastic use will help kind of set us on a better path for human and environmental health.
So what would that coordination look like? What are environmental groups hoping to see in this treaty?
So we're looking for the member states to make good on their mandate and bring forward a treaty that is legally binding. It needs to include things like targets, timelines, clear definitions. Ultimately, it needs to recognize that every single stage of the life cycle of plastics, from the extraction of oil and gas, which is what most plastics are made from, to the disposal of plastic waste, whether that be in landfills, incinerators, or in the environment, causes harm to our environment and to our health. So, amongst other things, we would want the treaty to include a commitment to reducing plastic production, to eliminating toxic chemical additives, and to phasing out unnecessary plastic products.
So, in your eyes, what would a strong treaty actually look like?
It would take into consideration that plastic pollutes from cradle to grave. So therefore, we need a treaty that focuses on reducing the amount of plastic we make and use instead of false solutions like recycling, which don't stop pollution at all stages of plastic. It needs to recognize that plastic pollution doesn't care about borders, so it travels great distances over land, air, and water, which is one of the reasons we would need binding targets and agreed upon definitions to ensure that we're all actually working towards the same goals, and that Indigenous people are often on the front lines of the worst harms from plastic production and waste disposal. And, Indigenous nations are not really represented at the UN Environment Assembly. And so, our Indigenous nations, their sovereignty, their rights being recognized and respected in the treaty text.
What's at stake if these talks either fall apart or end with a weak agreement?
Well, every day without action is more plastic being produced, used, disposed of, being the environment in their bodies. So, the stakes are fairly high. But I think if it came down to either a weak treaty or no treaty, many environmental groups would tell you that they would rather see no treaty. And that's because a weak treaty could end up dictating where countries that sign on direct resources. So, for example, if the treaty ends up being all about recycling, despite the fact that we know that recycling does not address the pollution associated with the extraction of oil and gas. It doesn't deal with the microplastics that actually can be created by recycling and end up in our bodies. We would rather not to go in that direction because countries would end up spending all of their money, resources, and time on recycling and instead have no treaty and have the majority of countries that have been participating in these negotiations that are actually pursuing more ambitious policy work together on a treaty for the willing. And that treaty would include things like commitments to phasing out unnecessary plastic products, toxic chemicals, and reducing plastic production.
So beyond governments, what role do you think that everyday people can play in pushing this issue forward, if not recycling? Because I know that's something that we've all been taught is a solution, that's what we were kind of given.
I mean, plastics recycling is just really tricky because it's not like metal and glass, and so you can't recycle it infinitely. It kind of degrades every time you recycle it, and that's even if you're fortunate enough to collect the material to begin with. So unfortunately, yes, recycling is not really the solution for the plastic crisis. But, doing your best to avoid plastics when you can. It's estimated that 40 to 50% of plastic is used for either single-use products or packaging. So these are things we use super briefly before we end up disposing of them. But I'll tell you, as someone who tries to do that, it is not easy to avoid single-use plastics and packaging. They are everywhere. And that is why, this kind of systemic problem requires systems-level change. And so the number one thing you can do if you're passionate about this issue is to contact your federal elected representative, your MP, and tell them that you're concerned about plastics. You want to see the government do more. We live in a democracy, and that democracy does not end on the day we vote. It is ongoing. Our elected officials work for us, and they need to know that this is something that people in Canada care about.
Ashley, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Ashley Wallace is Associate Director of Environmental Defence. It's a Canadian environmental advocacy organization. You're listening to Information Radio. The time is just about 7:57. I'm Chloe Friesen. It's time now for news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. A Winnipeg educator says she has spent weeks pushing social media company Meta to reinstate 2 of her Instagram accounts. Laura Thomas is a vice principal in the Winnipeg School Division. 3 weeks ago, she got a call from Meta saying, or she got an email, I should say, from Meta saying a post on one of her accounts connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why it's happened. She calls it emotional and frustrating. A Lac du Bonny area man says he does not believe Manitoba's Environment Minister took him seriously when he filed an appeal against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. The provincial cabinet used an order to dismiss all appeals against a new license for the Tanko mine at Burnock Lake. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. And coming up on Information Radio, we are going to hear from Laura Thomas, who Heather mentioned. She is trying to get her Instagram account back after it was disabled by AI for allegedly violating rules that she says she knew nothing about. So we will hear from her coming up on Information Radio. Currently here in Winnipeg, it is 19 degrees at the Forks. We are looking at the potential of a rain, 60% chance of showers, and the risk of a thunderstorm today in Winnipeg. We will have more on your forecast coming up in the next hour of the show. World Report is next.
Today on Q.
I'm Garvia Bailey, sitting in for Tom Power. Ebony Rowe is the founder of Honey Jam, Canada's first artist development program that helped launch the careers of artists like Nelly Furtado and Julie Black. She'll be here to reflect on creating a never-ending sisterhood.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Sean Henry. Staring up at the starry sky is an iconic part of Canadian summers. The tragically hip even sing about it. Some parts of the country are protecting dark skies from light pollution and drawing tourists with their nighttime views. Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Sam Sampson. As the world marks 80 years since the nuclear attack on Hiroshima, there are concerns global superpowers are becoming more militarized. Countries have even more powerful weapons now, and more world leaders are talking about using them. Crystal Gamansing reports.
At 8:15 local time, Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park fell silent. A tribute to all of those killed in the deadliest use of a single weapon in human history. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba telling the crowd, "We must not repeat the tragedy that was brought upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is our country's responsibility as the only nation that has suffered atomic bombings." He called today's environment increasingly severe, with wars raging across Africa, Asia, and Europe.
Looking at the arsenal stockpile of nuclear weapons that's around the world. There are more than 13,000 of them now.
Howard Kakita was 7 years old when Allied forces dropped the atomic bomb. He and his brother, American citizens, were visiting their grandparents.
Many of these 13,000 nuclear weapons that's available to the various countries in the world are anywhere from 10 to 200 times more powerful than the one that was dropped in Hiroshima.
Kakita champions non-proliferation, as do leaders in Japan. As songs of pacifism were performed, the experience of nuclear destruction clashed with the troubling reality of wars involving nuclear holders, such as Russia and Israel. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Russia is describing talks with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff as useful and constructive. Witkoff is in Moscow. Officials say he spent 3 hours with Russian President Vladimir Putin, discussing, among other things, the war in Ukraine. But there's still no sign Russia will agree to any kind of ceasefire. U.S. President Donald Trump set a Friday deadline to end the war. Otherwise, he says he will impose punishing sanctions. Here's Tammy Bruce with the U.S. State Department.
Clearly, the president's not happy with Mr. Putin and Russia, but he remains committed to diplomatic solutions.
Trump says he will see how these meetings go before he decides on next steps. A senior UN official is warning it could be catastrophic for millions of Palestinians if Israel expands its military operation in Gaza. But Israel's prime minister is signaling he is considering a full-scale occupation of the territory, even though hundreds of former security officials are calling for an end to the war. Susan Ormiston has this update from Jerusalem.
It's a tense wait now as furious debate swirls around next steps. Israel's security cabinet is scheduled to meet Thursday. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office signaled the armed forces are ready for any political decision, including a move towards fully occupying Gaza.
This would risk catastrophic consequences for millions of Palestinians and could further endanger the lives of the remaining hostages in Gaza.
At a UN Security Council meeting, the Assistant Secretary General, Miroslav Jenča, said any attempt to fully occupy Gaza would be deeply alarming. Eli David, the brother of one of the hostages, told the Security Council his family was traumatized by the latest Hamas video showing an emaciated Eviatar David.
In that video, my little brother was forced to speak to the world and then actively began to dig his own grave inside a filthy, dark tunnel in Gaza.
Families this morning warning full occupation of Gaza would be a disastrous decision.
Well, I don't know what the suggestion is. I know that we are there now trying to get people fed.
In Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump dodged the question of Netanyahu's plan.
The rest of it, I really can't say. That's going to be pretty much up to Israel. Yep.
Clearly, the U.S. is evaluating how Netanyahu's decision would impact the entire region, a volatile new turn in this 22-month-old war. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Trump puts the tariffs up, and Carney puts his elbows down.
Elbows down.
Elbows down.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre making his pitch to federal by-election voters in Drumheller, Alberta, and turning a critical eye to the Prime Minister. He says Mark Carney is not doing enough to stand up to U.S. tariffs.
Mark Carney has broken his promise to retaliate dollar for dollar. He's been making concession after concession, backing down to Donald Trump. As a result, Canadians are losing jobs and paying higher prices.
There are a lot of questions about Canada's next steps in this trade war. Carney has not mentioned countermeasures since August 1st, when Trump introduced a new round of tariffs. He has suggested he may remove existing tariffs if it will help Canadian industries. There will be more questions today when Carney holds separate meetings with his cabinet and the country's premiers. Carney is also taking steps to bring some relief to Canada's beleaguered forestry industry. After months of pressure from British Columbia, the Prime Minister is introducing new loan and grant programs worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Brady Strachan has those details.
The BC interior remains home to a world-leading softwood lumber industry.
Speaking in front of dozens of mill workers in West Kelowna, Prime Minister Mark Carney laid out his plan to revitalize the softwood lumber industry. It comes at a time of high tension with Canada's largest trading partner. The sector has been a long-standing target of the U.S., which recently raised dumping duties on Canadian softwood.
Let's be clear. Canada does not dump lumber into the United States. And we will continue to make the case that these current and proposed duties are unjustified.
Carney is pledging $700 million in loan guarantees to the industry and $500 million in grants and other funding to help companies diversify beyond the U.S. He says Canada will become its own best customer, using homegrown lumber to double the pace of new home builds. BC Forests Minister Ravi Parmar says it's about time.
This is really good news. We have been calling on the federal government for the last number of months to ensure that it is standing strong with British Columbians and forestry workers.
However, union leader Gavin McGarrigle of Unifor says the measures don't go far enough.
We need support right now for people who have been laid off. We need to make sure how are we going to keep these mills operating right now.
Meanwhile, Canada and the U.S. are still without a trade deal. Carney says he hasn't spoken with U.S. President Donald Trump in recent days and will pursue that conversation when it makes sense. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna, British Columbia.
More than 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants could go on strike later this month. Their union says after months of contract negotiations, there's still no agreement on wage issues, work rules, or unpaid hours. Its members have voted in favor of strike action. If an agreement still is not reached by August 16th, the union could issue a 72-hour strike notice. Air Canada says it believes there is still time to reach a deal. A rare find is causing excitement among archaeologists on Newfoundland's east coast. They uncovered some tiny artifacts in Fairyland, about 1 hour south of St. John's. As Henrika Wilhelm reports, it's turned out to be a big discovery.
It was a pretty neat thing to find.
Callum Bryden, a Memorial University graduate student, was the lucky finder of 7 so-called wampum beads at the colony of Avalon. The early English colonial site is where Bryden helps with excavations, and during a dig a few weeks ago, he came across the handmade shell beads, which are each about the size of a sunflower seed, cylindrical and colorful shades of purple. The beads are believed to be the first of their kind discovered in Newfoundland and Labrador, but at first, Bryden says the importance of his find wasn't quite clear to him.
I wasn't really thinking that I would be the one to find them. So it took me a second, but once we sort of realized what they were, it sort of seemed to be pretty significant.
Indigenous peoples made the beads from quahog clam and whelk shells, and according to Brian Galton, a Memorial University archaeology professor, they served a number of purposes.
Indigenous peoples used them for ornamentation, for ceremonial purposes, for diplomacy and things like that. And when Europeans first came to these shores, the Dutch and the English later, they adopted this indigenous use of wampum in their trade practices and also as a form of currency.
Galton says considering Fairyland's size and isolation, finding the beads is quite significant.
The people of Fairyland were interacting with, trading with, communicating with various peoples in various parts of North America and continental Europe. So these pieces really is a tangible reminder of those connections.
Galton says this summer has already brought a number of unexpected finds at the site, including small gaming pieces made of slate dating back to the 1620s. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, Fairyland.
That's your latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Sam Sampson, and this is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. .3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thanks for joining us this morning. Coming up on the show, imagine if you woke up and all of your Instagram pictures, stories, and reels had vanished. Well, that's what happened to a Winnipeg vice principal who had her account disabled. After Meta claimed she had violated community guidelines. It's been 3 weeks. She's still struggling to get her account back, and she's not alone. More on this story coming up first on Information Radio. But first, it's time for news headlines with Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city's issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room. That's where sensitive police data is stored. More fallout today from a Wab Canoe cabinet decision to dismiss appeals against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. One of the people behind one of those appeals says the Environment Minister didn't take his concerns seriously. We're going to hear from him coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. I'm Chloe Friesen. You're listening to Information Radio. Hello and good morning to the team on the show. Brad Lillies is behind our YouTube live stream. Good morning, Brad. Sierra Sanders, our show director, she'll be in shortly to talk about the commute. Abby Adiemi joins us now with a look at your forecast.
Still tracking the smoke, those warm conditions and the humidity outside with some clouds and scattered showers on its way. We do have special air quality warnings across central and northern Manitoba this morning. Very high risk. We're looking at 10 plus in most of these regions. We're talking about Flin Flon traveling into Thompson, Gillam, all the way to Norway House and tracking it as far as Churchill and the York region. We are seeing thick smoke in that area. So if you're feeling unwell, spend less time outside. Winnipeg at this time, still partly clouded. The sun making its appearance as we go through the day. The skies will become mostly cloudy, and there's a very good chance of showers, along with a risk of thunderstorms in some spots. So you might feel that in your area. It will feel warm and humid. We'll see temperatures climb to around 27, but it's going to be feeling warmer, close to 33 today, with those winds coming from the southwest. And as we head into the evening, these few showers will still be hanging back, so you're going to notice it on and off, but the skies will begin to gradually clear as we get into the evening. Across board, we're already seeing 19, close to 20 degrees in most of the regions, up from the northern part of the province all the way down south, except for the smoke, which is a concern from the central part of the province, tracking into the far northern part of the province this morning. Winnipeg 19, warming up to 27.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders, show director, joins me now for a quick look at your commute. Good morning.
Good morning. Got a call from Mayor Scott Gillingham.
Good morning, Mayor Gillingham.
Good morning, Mayor Gillingham. Thank you for listening. He called to let me know that westbound Portage at St. James Street, there's a stalled truck in the center lane. So proceed with caution if you are heading westbound Portage near St. James Street. There is a stalled truck in the center lane, so you're going to have to either go left or right to pass around that. So yeah, that's westbound Portage at St. James Street. A stalled truck in the center lane. Thank you so much, Mayor Gillingham, for letting me know about that. And if you have any updates on that situation or something else that's getting in your way out there, whether you are here in the city or out on the highways, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. There's still a little bit of time left in the show. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, last month, we heard from someone whose Instagram account was flagged and disabled by AI. A Manitoba photographer, Lynette Giesbrecht, lost over 5,000 followers and 10 years of portfolio work after Meta, Instagram and Facebook's parent company, stated that her account violated community guidelines. However, after weeks of calls and emails, her account was recently reinstated. Well, the same thing is happening to a vice principal in the Winnipeg School Division. Laura Thomas, who is also the president of the Fort Garry North Hockey Association, had all of her accounts disabled by Meta. But in this case, she says they cited child exploitation as the violation. Both of her accounts, one for the Hockey Association and another for personal use, have been disabled for the last 3 weeks. And while she can't think of any reason why her accounts would be flagged, Thomas has lost access to years of family photos and memories stored on the app. Laura joins us over Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So child exploitation is a big accusation. How did you feel when you got that message from Meta?
Yeah, it was, my heart just kind of sunk immediately, kind of went to, there's an obvious error here. And, in some explorations that we have since done, this does happen in error. And obviously that's what's happened here. So we just kind of got into action mode and thought, what can we do to fix this?
So what did your accounts look like previous to this happening?
Yeah, my accounts, my personal account was very much a family account. So it had pictures of my kids with all of their sports and their achievements and all of our family holidays. In 2020, I kind of took to being a little bit more of a content creator because I had a bit more time. So definitely there's some reels thrown in. And, there's pictures of my grandparents and nieces and nephews and just good family times. The Fort Garry North Hockey Association account was filled with city championship posts, information about tournaments and registration, and that's kind of how we communicated with our hockey association and beyond.
So really nothing out of the ordinary. It sounds like an average Instagram account. Take us through. So you get the message from Meta. What happens next?
Yeah, I got an email from Meta and saying that I had violated these community standards. And it was late at night and we just kind of thought, we'll deal with this in the morning. And by the time that the morning came, I couldn't access any of my accounts. So I actually have a classroom account from when I was a teacher, and I kind of went on there, and a few people reached out to a few people, and they walked me through kind of next steps, what needed to happen.
What did those next steps look like?
So I had to become Meta verified on my Oh This Classroom Glows account. And from there, you can access Meta support pretty quickly. And so we were able to get a hold of a Meta agent that next day. But that kind of led to a few emails, and nothing really happened. A case and file was opened, and then kind of followed up when we got home. We were at the lake, and when I got home about a week later, followed up with them again, spoke to another agent. So now it just looks like there's a file open, but there's been no real action to have it back instated yet.
And I want to clarify, when it comes to getting verified or Meta verified, that's the blue check mark, correct?
That's the blue check
and
mark.
And do you pay for that?
You do. So, I mean, maybe if you have 1 million followers, you don't need to pay for it. I'm not sure, but it is, I think it's $20 a month. So we're paying for that right now on my classroom account. And that seems to be, from what I've heard from people that have gone through this, and I've spoken to probably about 5 people that have gone through this as well, that seems to be the best way to get action from Meta.
So we spoke to a local photographer whose business page was flagged by Meta in a very similar situation, and she had wondered if it was flagged by AI. And doing some digging, it does look like Meta does use AI to flag and take down content that does go against their community guidelines. Is this something that you've been looking into or have heard about from Meta?
Yeah, so recently my husband and I have done, some reading about this, and again, just in talking to people, and yeah, it does look like there is a number of, AI, things that Instagram use, as well as human, but that's where there could be the error that happens. And in speaking to the agents as well, they definitely speak to that these errors do happen, and that then it goes through this whole process of trying to figure out what is right and what is wrong, and whether and who is doing that, I'm not too sure, but hopefully there are some humans behind that process. But definitely, I think, looking at those billions and billions and billions of Instagram accounts, there is an AI component to what they are doing.
What have you been hearing from hockey parents who might have accessed the Fort Garry North Hockey Association page for information?
Yeah, that's been really frustrating. We opened registration July 15th, and this all happened July 19th, so the timing hasn't been great. And, the account just went blank, so it was just disabled and non-existent. So we definitely sent an email out to our association and added to our website that our, initial account has been taken down. Last week, I actually had to start a new one because it needed to happen, and we have to be able to communicate with our association through social media. It's a quick and easy way to get information out to them. So I think that everyone is very understanding. To go from over 1,000 followers to having to completely rebuild and get that voice out there and get people to like and share and all of that again.
Some folks might look at a situation like this and say, oh, it's just social media, it's just Instagram. But what are your concerns if you aren't able to re-access your accounts?
Yeah, I mean, I have gone back and forth, and it's like, it is just an Instagram account. No one was hurt, and it wasn't hacked initially. I thought maybe it had been hacked. And then you're like, did someone have all my pictures now and my kids' pictures? And that was really emotional, but that's not the case. So it is emotional to think about, even my grandparents, who are no longer with us, and there's pictures and videos on there of their voices and, my kids growing up and all of their birthdays, and definitely some weirdness and silliness that happened through, COVID and staying home and all of those memories. It's disheartening to think about that all being gone. And yes, it's just an Instagram, but it's kind of a portfolio of our life. And, I didn't really Instagram for anyone else except for myself on my personal account, and my family. It's just really something nice to look back at all those memories.
It does act like a photo album for a lot of families.
Yeah, and that's definitely how I used it, to definitely post about what was happening and our celebrations and our successes and all of those things. And so it's really, it's disheartening to think about, that being gone. I'm hopeful that, if I kind of persevere and keep looking into this, that I can get it back. But yeah, it's a lot to think about if that doesn't happen.
If you do get it back, what does it do for your trust in social media? Will you continue to use Instagram in the same capacity?
Yeah, that has definitely changed. I've spoken to my husband about this a few times. It just feels kind of different now. I definitely feel a little bit more cautious about what I'm sharing, and just a little bit, thinking, I guess, twice that something like this could happen.
Laura, thank you for sharing your story here with us, and hopefully we'll get an update soon.
Thank you so much. Yes, I hope so too. Thank you.
Laura Thomas is a vice principal at Faraday School and the president of the Fort Garry North Hockey Association. And CBC did reach out to Meta about their rules. They issued a statement saying, quote, "We take action on accounts that violate our policies, and people can appeal if they think we've made a mistake," end quote. They were not asked to comment specifically about Laura's situation.
On This is Manitoba, we celebrate who we are, and we lean into the challenges here that can make this place even better. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of This is Manitoba. On the podcast, we tackle one topic in a new episode every Friday. It's always about us, the news, and the people here. Get into some local listening. Find and follow This is Manitoba wherever you get your podcasts.
Modern Family's Phil Dunphy is one of TV's funniest dads.
Because there is no Dunn in Dunphy.
But before landing the role, actor Ty Burrell was rejected by Hollywood for 20 straight years. Then, the phone rang.
Quick, what's my favorite hospital food? Jell-O.
Rejecting Ty Burrell. From the creators of Under the Influence comes We Regret to Inform You. Wednesday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen.
8:25 a.m. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. We've got a time for a bit of music here. Carter and the Capitals are a 5-piece pop funk band from Edmonton. When lead singer Lyndon Carter isn't busy slinging bagels at his bagel shop, I love bagels, he's writing love songs with a crisp disco sound that's become the band's signature. Here's a song he co-wrote with rapper Conch that features Opal Chaplin. It's called Get Back to What We Had.
When I'm out, I'm seeing your face. Is it really you or just my mistake? I keep on running into your friends. It's even worse when I hear that you're with him. And I begin to think of our past love, that nightclub. There's no one else when you start to dance, love. A trance, 'cause I know us. So why can't we just
Carter and the Capitals with a good song to get you grooving on a Wednesday morning. Certainly happened here in the studio. That is Get Back to What We Had. You're listening to Information Radio. Quick thank you to our associate producers today, Chidi Akuma, Shanalee Vidal, and Jennifer Dosso. And hello to Marjorie Dowhouse, host of Radio Noon, here with a preview. What's coming up on the show today?
Well, last week on Up to Speed, you talked to a sommelier, right?
It was so much fun. I learned so much about wine.
Yeah. Well, what better time to enjoy, some wine, some beverages, some entertaining than summertime? So our sommelier, Christopher Sprague, will be joining me today to take your questions on anything wine, food, entertaining, and we're also going to talk about non-alcoholic options, because a lot of people are choosing to still enjoy wine just without the alcohol, right?
Wine pairing is fascinating to me because there's so much science behind it. But I wonder what he'll say if I threw McDonald's chicken nuggets and fries, is there a wine pairing for that?
There probably is.
Probably. Yeah. I might call in. Listen for my voice.
Okay.
Later this afternoon.
Okay, I'm going to look for your call, Chloe. So call us
you.
after 12:30 with your questions coming up on Radio Noon.
Thank you so much, Marjorie.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Marjorie Dowhouse. Radio Noon starts at 12 o'clock. The call-in starts just after 12:30. It's time now for your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. Partly cloudy, 20 degrees right now. It's going to get cloudy and a good chance we're going to see showers, maybe even a thunderstorm today. That wind's from the southwest, gusting to 40 through the day. 27 is the high this afternoon. The humidity will make it feel warmer. Wildfires burning near Thompson continue posing a threat. An 18,000-hectare fire is burning out of control about 14 kilometers north of the city. Mayor Colleen Smook says crews are busy trying to contain the blaze. She says there have also been several lightning starts, sparking new fires. Cooler temperatures and rain are forecast later this week. Smook says they have to keep their guard up.
We've been on edge because you're basically under, a state of emergency that you could have to evacuate at any given time. So everybody's had to, be ready and be on their toes in case we do have to move.
Smoke and a different wildfire prompted the partial evacuation of nearby Nissachawasik Cree Nation over the long weekend. This is Manitoba's worst wildfire season in 30 years. 165 active fires are burning across the province. A Winnipeg educator says she has spent weeks pushing social media company Meta to reinstate 2 of her Instagram accounts. Laura Thomas is a vice principal with the Winnipeg School Division. 3 weeks ago, she got an email from Meta saying a post on one of the accounts connected to her email violated community guidelines. Thomas says she doesn't know why it happened. Since then, she has spent hours on the phone with Meta support staff.
It's very frustrating. It's emotional. And you want to do the right thing by these, social media accounts. And it's all just for connection, right? Connecting with others. And when that's taken away, it's very hard.
Now, all of this comes after Meta issued an apology to an Ontario teacher for wrongly accusing her of child exploitation and deactivating her account. As of yesterday, both of Thomas's accounts were still disabled. A Lac du Bonny area man says he doesn't believe Manitoba's Environment Minister took him seriously when he filed an appeal against a new license for an eastern Manitoba mine. The provincial cabinet used an order to dismiss all appeals against a new license for the Tanko mine at Burnick Lake. Environment Minister Mike Moy says all of the concerns raised by the appeals were dealt with through conditions in the license. Aaron Weeb, who lives at Pinawa Bay on the Lee River, says that's not true.
You're manipulating me, right? You're making me feel like you care, but you don't care. I would literally rather not get responded to or told to go away. This is going through anyways, because that is what I'm being told, but it's being done with fancy words that makes me feel insulted, basically.
We've raised concerns about a lack of water quality testing at Burnick Lake, while the license requires testing of all effluent entering the lake. The city of Winnipeg plans to spend another $350,000 on its troubled police headquarters. The city has issued a tender to replace the roof over the boiler room and prevent water from above the server room. That's where sensitive police data is stored. That building opened 9 years ago. The police headquarters has been the subject of 2 scathing audits, an RCMP investigation, and civil lawsuits over bribery, fraud, and construction deficiencies. Prime Minister Mark Carney will meet with his cabinet and the country's premiers today. He is expected to provide an update on Canada's response to the new tariffs imposed by the U.S. last week. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is criticizing Carney for suggesting Canada might drop some tariffs on the U.S. to ease tension with the Trump administration.
He said he would do dollar-for-dollar tariffs during the election, even while he was simultaneously taking the tariffs off. He promised elbows up, but now he's doing elbows down. He's making one concession after another to Donald Trump.
Poilievre making the comment in Drumheller, Alberta, while campaigning for a seat in a federal by-election. Italy has approved plans to build the world's largest suspension bridge. It's a long-delayed project to link the island of Sicily to the Italian mainland. The price tag, 13.5 billion euros. That's about 21.5 billion Canadian. The controversial Strait of Messina Bridge was first proposed in 1969 and approved and cancelled many times over the years. Construction now could start next year. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'm trying to think about going over that bridge.
Yeah.
Fascinating. How long would it take?
It's a bit longer than Souris, I think.
Okay, probably. Probably a little bit. I do love that bridge, though. See, that one I'm comfortable on. I don't know about this one. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Adiemi is here with one last look at the weather forecast.
Smoke from the fire continue to impact much of central and northern Manitoba today. Air quality warnings and air quality statements still in place for Flin Flon all the way to Churchill and also the southeastern part of the province. Expect reduced visibility across the province. It's going to be smoky. It will get humid. Clouds and scattered showers from north all the way down south. We're going to see temperatures get to 27 for the southern part of the province today, feeling close to 30, while up north we'll see highs in the range of 21. Tomorrow, more sunshine in the forecast. Winnipeg right now, 19 degrees.
Thank you, Abby. Sierra Sanders has one last look at your commute.
Yeah, still seeing a stalled truck in the center lane at westbound Portage at St. James Street. Thank you to Mayor Scott Gillingham for calling that in and listening and giving me that tip. That was great. So yeah, that's westbound Portage at St. James Street. There's a stalled truck in the center lane, so you'll have to go around that to pass.
Thank you very much. Thanks again to Sierra Sanders, show director Abby Adiemi, technical producer Brad Lillies behind our YouTube live stream. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this week for Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for spending the morning with us. We'll see you again tomorrow.